3, 2, and 1.
Welcome to the City Council special meeting and budget workshop of June 9th, 2022. City Clerk, could we have a preamble, please?
This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by the California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and council members while allowing for public participation. The public may address the council using exclusively remote public comment options. Council may take action on any item listed in the agenda. Members of the public may view the City Council meetings by logging into the Zoom webinar. City Council meetings can also be viewed live and/or on demand via the city's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Brisbane CA, or on Comcast Channel 27. Archive videos can be replayed on the city's website, brisbaneca.org/meetings. The City Council meeting will be an exclusively virtual meeting. The agenda materials may be viewed online at brisbaneca.org at least 24 hours prior to a special meeting and at least 72 hours prior to a regular meeting. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comment in writing in advance of the meeting. Aside from commenting while in the Zoom webinar, the following email and text line will also be monitored during the meeting, and public comments received will be noted for the record during oral communications 1 and 2 or during an item. Email ipadilla@brisbaneca.org, text 628-219-2922, join the Zoom webinar, zoom.us, with the ID 991-9362-8666 and the passcode 123456. Call-in number is 1-669-900-9128. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact me at 415-508-2113. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. We're calling the meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cunningham? Here. Councilmember Davis? Here. Councilmember Lentz?
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell is absent. Mayor Mackin?
Here. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I get a first and second to adopt the agenda as it stands?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, second, Lentz. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham? Aye. Councilmember Davis? Aye. Councilmember Lentz?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell is absent, and Mayor Mackin.
Aye. We move to oral communications number 1. This is an opportunity, any member of the public wishing to make a public comment, any item that is not on tonight's agenda.
Madam Mayor, I see no raised hands, and I have not received any written correspondence or text messages.
All right, very good. We move on to tonight's discussion. This is a budget workshop. First item A is the city manager introduction to the 2022-23 budget. And city manager, I'd like to ask you, normally after your presentation, we have council questions. Would you prefer that those be held until the end?
We could do it either way. If there's some specific questions about, I'm going to go over some revenue issues. If there's some specific questions about that, maybe that'd be a good time to take those while they're still kind of fresh in people's minds. With regards to the overall budget, I think, a lot of that will be kind of explained as we go through the evening. And so maybe some of those questions could wait to the end. Okay.
All right, very good. Go ahead, please.
All right, thank you very much. Tonight's, we got a long night in front of us, so I'm going to try to be brief. I'm very pleased to present to the council this evening the 2022-2023 city manager recommended budget. I want to take a special moment to thank our finance director, Carolina Yoon, and our assistant city managers, Stuart Schillinger, for all the hard work they have done to pull this budget together. And you're going to see, I think, a lot of information tonight for the first time that I think in the years to come is going to be very illuminating for the council and for the community in terms of what the city does and how we provide services. So I'll go to the next slide. We're going to go over the general fund revenues and expenditures tonight, and then also the overall revenues and expenditures. You know, we have more than just the general fund. Our major other fund is the utility fund, which our water and sewer. We do have some other funds also. So in terms of issues, tonight is kind of the culmination of several years of work moving towards a program budget. And a program budget basically refocuses the budget process towards the services that we provide as the community sees them, probably as the council sees them, as opposed to presenting a budget in the way we're organized, which is the traditional way. We present the various departments and we show all of our budgetary expenditures through that lens. Tonight, you're going to start to see some programs. You're certainly going to hear from all the departments, and they're going to present in somewhat of a more traditional fashion, but you're also going to see program costs and programs that we have identified that are sometimes cross-departmental, certainly cross-division within departments, but to capture kind of the essence of the services that we're providing. One caveat to all this, and it may come up as we have discussions, is that we are going to show you cost of the programs, and that gives you a sense of what those services and programs are, their financial impact to the city. But it can't be viewed through the lens of disaggregating it from the whole. And by that, I mean that all the programs reflect, in most cases, a percentage of time of different individuals who are involved in that program. And those individuals, employees, are involved in a variety of programs throughout the city and throughout their department. So you can't look at a program and say, well, it's $380,000. We want to cut that. Now we can save $380,000. That's not the way this works. But what it does give you is a sense of what that overall cost is. So if we decide that certain things are no longer a priority, then we have the ability to kind of repurpose our staff and our resources towards areas, in which we feel are higher priority. So that, may be a little bit different in terms of how you look at the budget. And, we'll certainly be ready to answer questions with regards to that as we move through this process. Reminder that all of our labor contracts are open. This is our collective bargaining contracts that we enter into with our employees through state law. Certainly in the last couple of years, we've been working our way through the COVID recession. I think it's good to reflect the moment or now that, 2 years ago, we were at this point, we were adopting a 2-year budget, and we were really, really concerned about where things were going. We just didn't know. Nobody knew just how far the bottom was going to be. Fortunately, things did not work out as badly as they might have, and we've been able to get through this event much better than I feared at the beginning. Obviously, we took a tremendous hit and continue to see issues with our hotel tax, but our sales tax actually the first year rose for a couple of different reasons. This year has come back down a little bit, and we're projecting it in that down number, which is historically what we were, I think, about 3 years ago. So we're doing okay there. We didn't, bottom out like we thought we might possibly. Obviously, inflation is going to be a factor going forward, and we'll have to contend with that. in this year's budget and next year's budget. It certainly may have some impact on what we can do throughout the year. Down the road, we have various projects. Some of them are actually under construction, such as the projects out at Sierra Point that aren't fully on the tax roll yet. So that will serve us well in the next few years. We have the quarry application, of course, the Baylands out there. None of those are included in our revenue projections. We have affordable housing fund, about $4 to $5 million that is available to be programmed. We do have an affordable housing strategy that is working through one of your subcommittees, and we hope to have that to you by this fall. Earlier this year, we purchased the 70 Old County Road parcel, the old Bank of America site, as the council is aware. We have programmed $10,000 in the budget for a community process to discuss the ultimate use of that site. And we had worked with our economic development subcommittee to come forward with that idea. So that will be coming forward to you later on in the year. As you know, we had the technology projects master plan. We're budgeting about $500,000 a year. That is in the budget, and that will be ongoing for the next several years as we modernize and catch up with our technology, take advantage of big technology where we can. Diversity, inclusion, and equity. As you know, we have an internal committee as well as now a community committee on this. So we anticipate suggestions and ideas to come forward from council appointed committee, and that is not yet included in the budget. We don't know what those things might be. I wouldn't anticipate they would really expensive. So I think they're probably things going to be able to find. Certainly will want to. Flip the chart. Okay. So as you go through the budget, and the finance director kind of walks you through where we're at, again, as we've been saying for many, many months now, we've had a significant hit on our hotel taxes, which at one point we were projecting to be over $3 million, and I think came in well below $1 million last year. The industry is starting to recover, but it's very sluggish. I was comparing it yesterday to a person that I was talking to, and kind of comparing it to the recession that we had in the early 2000s, what we might refer to as the 9/11 recession, where we saw hotel taxes plummet overnight, but then quickly skyrocket back and grow. They were quickly, within a year or two, back up and above where we had projected. So this is different. This is a much more slower, much more sluggish recovery, to the extent that hotels are focused on a business clientele. I think, the world has changed quite a bit, and businesses that had a lot of employees on site, especially in the office industry, many of those people are working remotely, if not all the time, part-time, and there's certainly much more access to remote business transactions. So just how well the hotels ultimately come back, I think it's a little bit of an unknown at this point. So we've been looking at several items. The business license tax, we have talked to the city council about. We have that prepared, and we will be bringing that to you at the July 14th meeting to consider placing on the ballot in November. We've looked at various general business licenses, dealing with biotechnology, which is burgeoning here in Brisbane. We have some businesses. We're going to probably have many, many more over the next few years and decades. So we may want to look at some way of capturing that. And we probably wanted to go back and take a look at just of our general rates, because we haven't adjusted anything since 1983. However, in looking at our revenues, the kind of the big bang for the buck, if you will, is what's referred to as a local option sales tax. It is a sales tax that is enacted by a city and captures sales within its city, retail sales, business to business sales, anything that's subject to the sales tax. If we can flip to the next chart. So in the North County area, there are 3 cities that have adopted the higher rate, which you can go up to a half cent. You can do a quarter cent, or you can do a half cent. So Daly City got theirs approved by their voters in 2020. South San Francisco actually did theirs in 2015. And San Bruno, I believe, did in 2019. So in our neck of the woods, most of the cities are doing the half cent sales tax, which gets you up to 9.875 countywide. We're at 9.375. And the other city that's considering this in our area is Pacifica. They're going to have an item on the November ballot. Burlingame has a 0.25% sales tax. Redwood City, East Palo Alto also have the 0.5% sales tax. So that's something for the city council to consider. If we are going to go forward with it, we need to go forward with it in a council election year. So that obviously is this year. If we defer, then you'd be deferring for a minimum of 2 years to the 2024 election. You can go out for an election essentially in perpetuity, or you can go out for an election with a specific time frame. One of the little quirks of the sales tax through the voting process is that if it's a general tax of the city for general city services, you need 50% plus 1 to have it passed. If you were to dedicate it for a specific use, for example, let's say you wanted to build a community center and you wanted to sell bonds to support that, and you wanted, let's say, to have a 30-year sales tax to support it, then you need 2/3 vote. What we would be, or what I would be suggesting that you look at is a general purpose tax to help fill the void of the hotel taxes and just to address some of the ongoing needs of the city. I think there's a lot of infrastructure needs, as I think council is aware that we have a difficult time finding funding for that this could potentially help with too. So I think is that the I think I got one more slide. So the sales tax by industry for our sales tax, this is our 1% sales tax that we get. We have about 25% or a quarter of it comes from the county pool. That's based on our size in the county in terms of revenue generated. We have general retail about 14%, business to business at 13%. You can see the largest area is the construction industry, so that's 39%. Food products is relatively small at 9%, so that may be more of your restaurants, that type of business. So with that, Madam Mayor, I conclude my comments and open to any questions, especially with regards to this last area I covered.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham, do you have any questions?
The business license tax and the sales tax, I mean, obviously there's not going to be any sales tax coming out of any of the biotech businesses, and they're going to proliferate over the next X amount of years, I'm assuming. Hopefully we're going to increase our occupancy in our hotels. But when you look at the biotech businesses that are now going to make up the majority of the renters, whoever out at Sierra Point, the number of cars and trucks and vehicles going in and out of those businesses cause a lot of wear and tear on our roads, probably increased police, fire presence, et cetera, et cetera. What can we do relative to those taxes? Do we have an idea? to offset what I'm assuming is additional costs based on how many people are going in and out of the place.
I mean, I would note that those projects all will generate a fairly significant amount of property tax for the city. And so, and that basically is agnostic to whether it's biotech or just an office, but those properties coming on the tax roll are not there currently, so that will be a help. We're looking at some different ideas with regards to biotech. I think around potentially a head count of some sort or something of that nature. I don't know, Stuart, if you wanted to weigh in at this point on that, because I know we've looked at various things. I think we haven't really gotten totally comfortable with a specific proposal at this point.
Other cities have done headcount. Other cities have done payroll. Other cities have done laboratory space. Laboratory space is a challenging one because that could be seen as an ad valorem tax versus a business license tax. So we are still doing our research to see what might be the best one for us.
Thanks.
And I would just note that if a business license tax doesn't relate to the services that are provided to the companies, that would be more of a fee for service, and we're looking more at a general tax that can be used for any purpose within the city.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Letts.
I wanted to piggyback on Karen's question. So what is the city of South San Francisco doing? I mean, they're supposed to be the biotech capital of the world. What mechanisms do they have in place for getting some kind of business tax or some other type of tax from their biotech companies?
They are very much just collecting their general business license tax. They are very much encouraging those types of businesses to come in to generate the number of jobs, to generate probably the sales tax of their downtown and other areas. I think is more of how they look at it.
So nothing unique then?
Nothing unique in South San Francisco. We're looking not only are we looking on the peninsula, but we're also looking what they do in other states that have more biotech related.
That's really interesting. Okay, I would have thought that they had something in place. Just knowing South City, right? I mean, 2015, they implemented the that sales tax.
The sales tax is what they've done so far. I mean, we do know that I think at least on the peninsula, I believe Mountain View has done a head tax. Now that's not
biotech though, right? Yeah.
Right, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out as companies have people working from home more and more. So these things are always a little bit elusive. You think you got it captured at some point, and some world changes on you. But we are looking at different options, and I think we had a very good conversation with the mayor a couple months ago about this. So we were definitely got it on our radar screen to try to come up with something as we look to the future.
All right, no, that's great. And then, so what are you thinking about in regards to increasing the rates for the business license tax?
Yeah, let's see. Stuart's unmuting himself here. You want to tackle that, Stuart?
Or you're not ready for prime time yet?
It's not. I mean, we haven't really looked at it in great depth yet. The issue being that we haven't raised the rates for the individual categories for over almost 40 years now. Mm-hmm. So we've been living off of the growth of revenue from businesses growing through the categories. And I think it might be time for us to not only look at that, but also look at, just increasing the cost for business license tax. I mean, if you looked at it from an inflationary standpoint, we'd probably be at, over 200%. And, we wouldn't do something like that. But, we do need to look at how do we capture more of the revenues from the businesses in a way that makes sense. And it's one of those challenges is where you don't want to stymie small businesses, where at the same time you do want to be able to take you be able to use the revenues coming off of larger businesses to provide services that the whole community needs.
Okay, so like when you're looking at those types of rate increases, I know that we've, in our discussions about water, you can't, you have to be fair, right? So like with these business license rates, is there also like a fairness thing where, the smaller companies have to kind of pay a certain percentage, the same that a larger company has to pay a certain percentage?
There isn't anything directly when you do a tax. So water and sewer charges are fees for
Rates.
service.
Okay,
So you have to match your fee for service with the cost of the service. Taxes, you can create a tax that is, what you think is able to be passed by the voters, but at the same time, you need to make sure that it isn't. There's a word for it about taking too much of the revenue from a company above and beyond what is acceptable. And that's when we looked at the business license tax for the liquid fuel companies. We looked at that. When we looked at the business license tax for the recycling company, we looked at that. We went to court many years before I got here over the billboards, and at that point in time, it was determined that 8% of a company's revenue was an acceptable amount to take. So there's some guidelines out there in the law, but there's nothing specific that says it can't be more than X.
okay, all right, no, that's good to know. And then, in regards to the sales tax, so, Clay, or Stuart, could you go back to that chart, the pie chart slide? I'm hoping maybe you could just drill down a little bit more on like who those entities would be.
Okay, if we can get back to the pie chart, Ingrid. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so this one here. So, okay, so like construction, would that include Golden State Lumber, or are they retail?
No, they'd be construction.
Be construction, okay. And then say the food products, is that by right as well, or are they in like a business to business?
Food products does include by right.
It does include by right, okay. And so, and I know we have some fairly large like food operators in the industrial park. If you excluded them, and then you kind of looked at our restaurants, what kind of percentage do you think that might be?
My guess, and maybe Carolina might have a better guess than me, but my guess is the restaurants probably produce no more than $100,000 worth of sales tax for us, and we get taken about 5.2 million. I mean, we can get you better numbers at a future meeting. That's just I'm just trying to think about, a couple of our top restaurants are maybe in the $20,000 range, but that may be only one or two of them for us.
Okay, for sure. And then, like the general retail. So I'm just kind of thinking of our town. It's like, okay, well, where's that general retail? Can you dive a little bit deeper into that, where that is coming
I think
from?
the big one in that one remember this is 21-22, so we had a little bit of the real in there. So there was some real revenue in that number. So that will come, out, and the general retail will probably come back down. Other ones, periodically you'll have a business that's sitting in one of the office buildings that's a back office for a major internet company. I'm thinking that maybe you might have room and board, it might be in there.
Okay, all
So
right.
I mean, there might be some, the interesting thing about our city, and I think this is something that Clay has talked about a number of times in the past, is that it's the types of business product that we have attracts a variety of different businesses all the time. For 1 year we had VWR, 1 year we had the Real, 1 year we had Walmart.com. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly what we're going to get sales tax out of at any given time. I mean, Putero was an interesting business for a while. So I just go, different ones go up and down. You know, Trimark is still here, but Trimark's now has all of their sales tax flowing through San Diego because of how they process their sales.
What about cannabis delivery?
Cannabis, I'm not quite sure where cannabis delivery comes in. It might be coming in general retail. We'd have to look at that. But we are not, we've got a couple of cannabis delivery services in town. They did really well at the beginning of COVID, but they have fallen off since then.
So Stuart, so say, a family goes to Nana's Kitchen and they get some Chinese food and this increase is now part of the sales tax. So, and they spend say like $60. So what's going to be their out of pocket?
I was going to say, I just went to Nana's for my 3 and we had 100. So
okay,
that was going to make it a whole lot easier for me. So out of 100, so if I spend $100, the city gets $1 in sales tax. And if we do another 1/4%, we would get another 25 cents.
So, okay, so if we went up a half cent.
I went up a half cent, we get 50 cents, sorry.
50 cents, okay, so it's gonna cost that person 50 cents.
Additional.
Okay, all right.
On 100.
Out of $100.
$100, 50 cents. Okay, all right. And then I know we got other stuff, coming down the line in the presentation. I know there's talk about the recession fund, taking some money out of that. If we were to move forward with this sales tax, and it was successful in November, the money, we wouldn't be able to use that, or we wouldn't start collecting money until when?
You'd start collecting January 1st.
January 1st. All right. And
first year you get about a half. Yeah.
Okay. And then if we wanted to, we could take the revenues that we get from the additional money in sales tax and we could start putting money back into that recession fund that if we decide to go that route, correct?
Right. It would help with the projected deficit that we are currently showing. So it would take a big bite out of that.
Okay. All right, cool. And then when would the council need to make a decision if we wanted to put it on the November ballot?
So very good question. Basically, we are under a pretty tight time frame. So we have to submit to the county, I believe, no later than July 18th, I think. Something like that. So we basically have the July 14th meeting to do this. So what I was out of tonight's meeting, I know some others may want to speak, but if it's the wish of the council to at least move this forward to the next step, then we would prepare it for being placed on the ballot and bring that to your July 14th meeting for you to have that discussion. And if you choose, not to at that time, you could also do that. But if you wanted to do it, you'd be prepared to put it on the November ballot.
Okay, great. All right, those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Davis?
I don't have any questions, but I'm happy to discuss this item whenever we're ready.
Okay, so I would just dovetail off of what Councilmember Lund said. In addition to replenishing the recession fund, we have pension obligations. And if targets aren't met, which could be actually a big possibility, we could also push some funding into that direction, correct?
Correct.
So when we talk about different businesses and licenses, R&D, do we have a category for R&D? Because I do know of at least 2 businesses now that we have that do R&D, and that's all they do.
I don't think we have anything specific.
I was gonna say, I don't think there's a specific category for research and development. I think it's still just a general business license tax. And our general business license tax is on either gross receipts or the number of employees. And what the business has to do is calculate their tax in both fashions based on the number of employees and based on their gross receipts. And whichever one is higher is what they pay us.
Okay, so if we could maybe possibly look into R&D, because I do see that we could potentially be expanding in that direction. I mean, it's kind of a segue with we're seeing more biotech. I think we might ultimately see more R&D as well. The second question is the business to business. Does that include all wholesale to wholesale distribution?
Anything that would be generated as sales tax, it would be.
Okay, because you have sometimes situations of distribution warehouses who actually sell to other retailers. So they are tax exempt in that transfer sale. So do we have a category for that?
In business license tax, that would still be a gross receipts.
Okay.
And I think the biggest challenge in all of this is trying to figure out if we want to have specific categories. I think the gross receipts may still be the best method, but maybe you have a different tax rate for different types of gross receipts.
Okay, because that's where when I thought also of R&D, it's pretty hard to pinpoint how to approach that.
Correct.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Do we have any other council discussion? Councilmember Cunningham?
Sorry, I keep finding my mute button. Just listening to this whole conversation, does it sound easiest to go the payroll route relative to figuring this out? I mean, Clay brought up the point about headcount tax, but then there's always the, people are working from home, and that's probably going to continue. Lab space seems like a nightmare unfolding in front of us, but payroll tax, I mean, that sort of seems like it's a constant, easy to determine thing. Does that sound like an easy answer to this? Or
I'm going to jump in on that one, because when I was on the planning commission and we were approving biotech project, one of the things that they emphasized is they were always challenging our parking requirements, because they said per square foot, they have hardly any employees. So when you get into payroll, where are you getting the payroll tax? That's the problem with biotech, at least. And the same thing probably with R&D and warehousing. You just have less employees. So it might work on certain companies, and I'll back out of this and let Stuart give you his opinion.
I think payroll tax could be a challenge. It depends on how a company classifies where their employees are paid from. A lot of the companies that we have are not solely located within Brisbane. They have multiple locations. Some of them probably have multiple locations on the peninsula. And saying, if a person works in multiple places where their payroll would be allocated to, that might be a challenge for us. Also, in our ability to attract businesses, one of the things that we've heard in conversations is the nice thing about Brisbane is that we do not have a payroll tax similar to what San Francisco has. And in fact, when San Francisco tries to attract businesses within their city, they give exemptions to their payroll tax just for that purpose. So I think the payroll tax could be a challenge for us, but I think it's a viable way to look at it and to see if that makes sense versus another option.
Is square footage an option?
We have square footage already located in our business license tax for warehousing. We don't collect very much off of that because, again, the gross receipts for the warehouses is higher than what it would be generated from the square footage. And also, when we were trying to do the cubic feet for the tank farm, that was challenged by Kinder Morgan, as it would be considered an ad valorem tax because it's based on the property, not based on what happens within the flow of the property or the business aspect of the property. So I would try and stay clear of that based on the experiences we had with Kinder Morgan.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else before we move on? Councilmember Davis, Lentz, going once? No? Okay. We move on then to our finance director, Carolina Yoon. And I understand that you would prefer that questions be held until all the departmental budget presentations are completed, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go right ahead, take it away.
I'll wait for the slide to be put on. First of all, thank you, Mayor Mackin and council members, just for allowing us, the staff, the opportunity to dedicate tonight for a budget workshop and review the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023. Okay. So first, we just wanted to remind the public of why we prepare a budget. The purpose is to allocate resources to meet the results required by the community as directed through the city council, adhering to the city goals. Those goals, as we see on the screen, were established several years ago to be fiscally prudent, provide a safe community, have community building, ecological sustainability, economic development. So the budget itself, it defines the policy set out by city council to adhere to these goals. It serves as an operating guide for management staff to monitor financial resources in compliance with state law and accounting standards. The budget is also the city's financial plan for the fiscal year, and it is a communication vehicle to the community on what the city has determined to be its priorities, to educate on how the city operates, and describes methods on how the operations are financed. So although the purpose is the results are required by the community, we understand there are external factors or external requirements that also impact the budget, but we also consider that the community's interests are also in line with those external requirements. So those are also considered. Moving to the next slide. So the budget process for City of Brisbane has determined after the recession and after several years had transpired, we returned to a 2-year budget and decided to review the operating budget on the even years. So staff develops programs to meet established goals. Staff then develops the proposed operating budget. Then they go to the city manager, where the city manager reviews the aggregated proposals and reviews with all of the departments as a whole to ensure that the resources are allocated across the organization most effectively in relationship to the priorities of the city. Now, each department submission has been reviewed with the city manager before being presented tonight. After that, we come before the city council for your review and that you may adopt the operating budget. The proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget, however, covers 1 year. And the reason for this is there's been quite a bit of volatility in the current economic environment, and we wanted to present a meaningful budget. Setting too far in the future might provide considerable variances, so we decided that it was best to propose a 1 year. Also, we implemented new budgeting software this year, and testing it with 1 year would allow us to better design and navigate the process and limit the strains of change management. Next. Oh, sorry. Going back, sorry. On the odd years, just as a reminder, the capital budget is not included in tonight's presentation because those are part of the odd years. And so staff presents capital projects with applicable funding options, and then the council reviews those budget proposals separately and adopts an implementation program. Next slide. So as Clay discussed earlier today, City of Brisbane has adopted the priority-based budgeting method. And so what we like to do is not only look at line item costs, but also really look at the cost of what a program entails, including labor costs, any services or consultants, or just a variety of costs that can be built into a program. And so this helps us identify what programs are costing so that we can determine what the city determines as priority in comparison from one program to another. So first, the city had to identify the results guided by the city goals. Several years later, in fiscal year 2016 to 18's budget, the city identified and defined the major programs. At that time, it was just determined to look at what were our programs, but it wasn't fully implemented until the fiscal year 2018-20 budget. During that period where the departments and the divisions went through and looked at what were the programs assigned, not only to the organization, but to each department and division. At the time, we came up with about 46 programs over 34 divisions or cost centers. So this year, what we did for the proposed budget is we took those programs, and even though they're flowing through our accounting system, we needed to fine tune them because we found that they were a little too general in some areas. And so we went through and really looked at what is our staff spending their time on, and what are the different programs and features that each division it puts out there. And so in order to do that, we decided to implement a software application tool, partnering with ResourceX to assist in this program evaluation to help us measure these programs. And by fine tuning, we came up with over 400 programs over 35 divisions. Since the last budget, we added one more department or one more division. So fine tuning is reflecting programs at a more granular level. So it's very important for us to understand that in order for us to look at the program costs, including labor, ResourceX helps us look at those costs from multiple perspectives. We can carve them into different segments, whether it's organization-wide or department-wide, like the public works as a whole, park and recreation as a whole, or start dividing it even further by all of the different divisions within parks and recreation or the divisions within public works. Trying to do that is very labor intensive if we were trying to use simple spreadsheets. So ResourceX helps us simplify that process. Also, it'll allow us to move into the next step, not this year, but hopefully in the next budget, to look at all of these programs and start scoring them to determine the best use of our resources in relationship to the service levels that the community values. Okay. So tonight's focus is going to be for the department programs, and we're going to see a new table that we haven't seen before. And what you're going to see is each department is going to provide a list of the various programs they have identified flowing through their department and how much of the resources of their budget are being allocated to those programs as a whole. Again, this includes labor costs, any consultants, any supplies, physical object, whether it's software, any cost related will be built into this percentage. And so some of the programs you'll see are similar between departments, like administration. Every department has some element of that. And then some you'll see are very specific to these departments and divisions. So this is just a sample. You'll see the numbering and then also the percentage. So in this case, the accounting, the top level includes personnel time, other resources dedicated to general accounting and keeping up to date on evolving standards. So it's moving in different directions of, or providing a little bit more insight into what the different programs would be. Next slide. Moving on to now an overview of our general fund of our proposed budget. So compared to the projected amount The middle column is the projected that we discussed during the mid-year review for fiscal year 22. Now on the right, we're going to see the proposed amounts for the proposed budget. So total revenue we're anticipating is going to go up slightly by 1% to 21,816,000. And then total expenses, net of transfers, unfortunately, are accelerating a little higher rate, up by about 9% to 25,014,000. So this puts us in a position where we would be using our fund balance by about $3.2 million. So we'll address the revenues more closely later. Next slide. This is just over the last 10 years, including the current fiscal year and the proposed budget of our revenues and the related expenses. So we'll see that the revenues were more than our expenditures each budget period, where we would provide us with a surplus at the end of the year. And 2014 through 2021 shown are all actual. But because of COVID and other economic issues currently happening, sales tax, we saw the reduction with one of our bigger sales tax providers leaving. So you'll see that the revenues have decreased. And the second to the last section there, if you compare it, we are lower than pre-COVID time. So we just wanted to make sure that this is a visual for us to kind of see in relationship to how are we doing to pre-COVID days. So we've got some ways to catch up, not only to make up for some of anything we lost during COVID, but even some revenue from prior to that. So then, unfortunately, the last two sections, you'll see that the expenditures are growing and more than the revenue that we expect to take in. Next slide. Moving on to our major sources of revenue. So these are the amounts that we're anticipating for these major sources of revenue. Property tax is slightly increasing to 5.3 million. Again, with the build outs of Sierra Point, we continue to see an increase of our property tax. It has remained steady even from COVID. Since COVID, it still has remained pretty consistent. Sales tax has dropped below COVID level, but it is slightly growing. And so we are anticipating 5.5 million being contributed from the sales tax for the next year. The transient occupancy tax, or TOT, has taken the biggest hit. And although it would be an increase over the previous year, it is still well below the pre-COVID average of about $3 million for TOT. Then finally, the business license tax is a slight increase, 4.7 million. This does not include the income generated from businesses over 10 million because that is transferred to capital assets. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that this amount is the net amount. We don't budget for other income such as reimbursements and such because those are unknown. The what and the when are unknown, so we don't budget. And so I did make reference to other income in the staff report. I just wanted to clarify about wildfire, that we saw a spike in 2021, or in the previous year rather, and that was because of the timing of reimbursements has accelerated. In previous years, you would have a wildfire and you would potentially see the reimbursement if it didn't, it could be the next fiscal year. And unfortunately, we've seen an increase in wildfires. So there was an influx of those reimbursements, and they have been coming in more quickly. So we will see them usually within the same fiscal year. And these are reimbursements to cover any expenses that we see incurred by our fire department to cover that as part of the sharing contract or commitment that we have with local agencies and state agencies. Moving on to the next slide. So for the general fund expenditures, we're looking at 25 million. And so I just wanted to highlight this, but each department will be providing more insight into what their departments will plan to spend. And so they will be discussing major new requests and programs. And also they will be showing you, as we saw earlier, the tables that they will be showing will reflect the program resources as percentages. And again, as Clay mentioned, the utility and marina funds will also be presented tonight, but they are not part of the general fund operating budget. So considerations for the coming year. A little rerun of the mid-year review and a little rerun of Clay's presentation. The employee contracts expire in June, so those are still yet to be finalized. The timing of hotel sector recovery is still unknown. The level of inflation, we know inflation will happen, but it's just the level and the resulting impact that's unknown. And supply chain issues are still in the headlines. It could be for a variety of reasons or a variety of supply, whether it's physical supplies or it could be manpower supply. Those issues and the extent of those issues, the impact is still unknown. We still have construction on Sierra Point. So there are costs involved with our staff having to address that, as well as revenue that we would see, but timing impacts when we would see it as far as property taxes. So it's definitely fluid. And PERS unfunded liabilities, as mentioned in the staff report, this is directly related to the economic rates and discount rates that the CalPERS board has set as far as their expectation of how investments will fund some of the liabilities of our retirement plans, of the assets that we hold with CalPERS. And unfortunately, if any decrease of what their expectations are is a direct relationship to the increase of our unfunded liability, means we have to pay more. So we have to always keep those in consideration when we're talking about labor costs. Finally, shown the impact of the cost related to org-wide major projects, such as the technology program, the new properties that we we purchased the old B of A building, but we're now leasing a building across the street. And so that's an org-wide major project that the cost related to that will definitely come into play in 22-20. Moving on. So several years ago, City Council definitely decided that it was prudent to put aside several aspects or several reserves to plan for future events. The first was the recession reserve of 2.5 million. There's another reserve for major unanticipated events or catastrophes and such of this area of 3.5 million. And then also implemented a policy to include a reserve for any annual fluctuations that could not be planned for in the design of the budget. But for one reason or another during a current year, if there was something that was just really cause a large variance, that we wouldn't necessarily have to come presented before the council, but it could be covered through this annual fluctuation reserve. And what it is, it's 5% of your proposed operating revenue plus 5% of your proposed operating expenses are combined. And so for fiscal year 22-23, that reserve amount would be 2.3 million, or 2,340,000. Moving on. And so finally, with those considerations, we have the following recommendations. Coming out of COVID, one of the things that we did continue throughout when COVID started was we determined that it was important to us to continue to provide necessary services. We wouldn't cut those. And so, of course, can't really say COVID is done. We're still in recovery rate or recovery mode. It's still a little fluid, but we are recommending that we continue to act on that position to provide the necessary services. And because City Hall is open regularly, several days a week, we propose that we actively fill any open positions to make sure that the city can continue to support the various programs that we have. We also recommend that we continue with 25 Park Place improvements to move forward with this project that will help expand the availability to the community. And as we look forward to years ahead of what will be in that building and what it will support, we don't want to fall behind, even though our expenses are more than our revenues this year, but we still feel it's important enough for us to continue with those improvements. Same with the org-wide technology project. We need to make sure that the city is well positioned in a tech position to make sure that we can offer the services at a high level, or at least at the necessary levels, and be most efficient with our community and with the programs we provide. And next, we are asking to delay funding to the pension reserve, at least for the budget, as we're setting the budget, and wait until the year-end results to determine if there are any savings. That is possibly an area that the council would wish to refill those reserves. And then finally, we are asking to use the recession reserve, as we know that that is what we are experiencing, to cover the difference that we expect in 22-23. We're expecting 3,198,000, but because of what we're projecting for fiscal year 22, that there was actually a surplus, that we would use that surplus towards what we expect to be short in 22-23, and which would decrease that amount then of using the fund balance of only 1,243,000. So those are our recommendations, but we will now be going to our department presentations. And again, we are not expecting any approval or not asking for approval of the budget tonight. It is mainly a workshop that we are just presenting and asking that you will be receiving it. So we'll move on. And again, questions will be at the end after all the departments have presented. So the first presentation will be for the finance department. Okay. So each department has a mission. And so for finance, we're required to deliver reliable financial information technology services. We're responsible for facilitating the planning, organization, implementation, control, coordination, and direction of the financial and technological policies and programs of the city as established by City Council and the city manager. For fiscal year 22-23, we're asking for a budget of $1,746,826. That would be covering 8 full-time positions. And the areas covered these are the major areas. You'll see in a separate slide that we cover quite a bit. General accounting, financial management, budget, cashiering, billing, and information services are the main areas that we cover. We have internal customers, so we do payroll processing, and we support any programs that are coming through the city. We support by collecting the fund and paying the vendors related to those programs. So we have the external customers through the businesses for business licenses. So it's a variety of areas that we cover. Moving to the next slide. So with this budget, apologize for the small print, but again, this year we decided to look at our programs at a little more granular level. And with accounting, because we cover all parts of the city, we wanted to kind of look at the customer perspective, whether it is external, which we do wear quite a bit of hats. So we cross-train our staff to make sure that we have coverage, that we can tag team for telecommuting as necessary, making sure that our counter is always staffed, and making sure that there's always someone that can answer questions, whether you're in the office. We have our phones that are forwarded to those that are working remote to make sure that they can answer questions as well. So the first line that we're showing at 18% accounting, again, this is more of a general accounting, and this includes labor costs for what it takes to cover the main financial areas of the city, including memberships for resources that we continue to use as reference, labor costs for the staff that are working on general accounting. The next area of 14% is a computer system, and this is primarily the accounting system and any labor that goes into support the computer system for accounting, as well as the staff required for the general computer system. And the next 14% for cashiering and payment receipt processing. Again, any program that collects a fee or any taxes that come in, we are responsible to make sure those are collected and recorded properly and flown and driven through the books, making sure that all of those are accounted for, and making sure that each department knows what their receipts are. 10% is administration. That is not only administration for our department, but also some administration that we support with other departments. 10% for forecasting and budgeting. As we mentioned before, the budget is a policy document, so it's very important that we have the information in place, the supporting software in place to give the best estimates, and not only look at 1 year at a time, but to look multiple years in the future, so that we can give the best estimates as well as provide better methods of forecasting and giving information to council and staff management. Payroll processing, 9% is again, very important for our staff. We need to make sure that the system is, that the system can handle and scalable for whether we're a small staff and when we grow during the summer, when we have additional staff for summer programs, as well as whether we have the staff reporting their time, and managers can help direct and manage that time. So all of that payroll processing is flowing through our system, making sure that the rates are correct and we have people dedicated, making sure that all of the staff is set up properly, that all of the benefit packages are flowing through our payroll system and paid, that our related vendors are paid. So there's a lot that goes through this payroll processing. So I didn't want to go through each and every single line item, but this is just a reflection, or just a taste of the different ways and programs that finance supports the city as a whole. And we are going to be continuing to look at these programs. If this is the first year stab, and if some look too granular, then we may go back to combine. But we wanted to get a good carve out of what our staff is spending their time on. So you'll see at the bottom, there are several projects listed where they were all less than 1% individually. So we just listed it as one. Moving on to the next slide. So where finance is asking for assistance or asking for more funds this year is to invest in technology. And basically, we do need to make sure that our forecasts and our budgeting tools are not restrictive, like using just a simple spreadsheet. Sometimes it's very labor intensive and doesn't get you the opportunity to do multiple scenarios, to look at all of the costs that come into play, quickly to give information to our managers if something changes, or if somebody is looking at various options. Having a forecast budgeting software helps you make those, build those scenarios so that you can offer better information to the council, and then also, and hopefully make better decisions based off of that information. The labor costing software, it's a similar concept, but labor is our biggest expense. And with all of the various bargaining groups that we have, not all of them have the same benefit packages. Not all of them have the same features to how they are paid, as far as their rates and any incentives that they have, so that we have to make sure that if we could have a labor costing software, we can easily add those items, and as the bargaining groups are coming to the table, it'll help us identify what each component, each request would cost the city, whether it's in the next year, 2, 3, 5 years or so. These are the types of tools that we feel are helpful for us to get better information in order to give better information out and hopefully make better decisions. And finally, for personnel, we have already discussed in the last year about adding an accounting systems analyst, but this was new to this budget year. It wasn't in the previous budget, and that analyst is already in place, but since it is a new position, we added it. And what this position will do, as we are increasing technologies, we saw that during COVID, being on at least at the front edge to be able to provide the best services to not only our external customers, but to internal customers, to our staff through financial reporting and such. And we will be adding more technology products to the city. We need to make sure that all of those products are flowing through our financial system properly. And so we needed someone to help be part of those projects, talking through those projects, making sure that there's always a finance component that's considered. And so we just needed some more assistance in that area. And then also to support our own accounting system. We don't ask the IT personnel to support that system. It's actually the accounting a team that has to support it to make sure that we have all the proper codes and such. So this staff will be helping us with that. And so with that, if you have any questions on the finance department needs.
I just want to say that I'll bet you at times coming up with this full budget with all of the unknowns that you had to project, you wish that we had requisitioned you a crystal ball, because I don't know how you and Stuart managed to put that together. It's really very, very, very difficult. And I don't have a question, so I'll move on to someone else in a minute, but I did want to just comment that your request for technology, thinking about doing spreadsheets to try to forecast is just so labor intensive, and it's just backwards by today's technology. So to be able to do that long-term forecasting, especially on labor costs, you really should have tools that are adequate to provide you with all of the nuances that you have to forecast. So anyway, we'll move on. Councilmember Davis, would you like to start? Any questions?
Well, I don't have any questions.
Okay, Councilmember Cunningham.
I do. I have 4 questions, and they don't all need answers, but I'm just going to ask questions. So category 130, general revenue collection. Can we get at some point, for my edification and for the edification of our general public, what our paper costs are and our photocopier costs? Because I think they are huge, and it's an area we should look at, and the mailing costs. And the reason I'm asked that was question number 2, what are our mailing costs per year? Number 3, how much to go paperless? And what I mean by that is, obviously, we can't go paperless for everybody, because a certain percentage of people are going to want to get that bill in the mail. But I think for a lot of us, I'm not sure what that percentage looks like, we could go paperless, but there would be a cost to separate that out. You know, these people are going to go paperless and these people are still going to receive a bill. You know, is that financially viable? I don't know. And the other thing, can we look at ways to reduce those kind of costs, which I think are an easy target? Number 1, for the cost, obviously, and number 2, from a sustainability perspective. And a question comes up a lot when you're talking to people out on the street about whatever topic. For example, today I was looking at how many people were running a particular stop sign in a particular area. And a citizen came up and was standing there, and she figured out what I was doing, and she was watching, and then she goes, you know, why don't we just have a police officer sitting here and watching this like you're doing? And when I said, this is what the package of a new police officer costs the city per year. And if we hired one and put it on this corner, then do we need one on 4 different corners in town? So if people knew the cost the average cost of an employee relative to when everyone's, you know, very quickly asking, you know, let's put police on every corner. Let's do this. Let's do that. Why don't we have more people doing this, that, and the other? And I'm like, well, you know, an X person probably package-wise costs us $200,000 a year. They go, oh. So I think that kind of information, putting out to the public relative to what we're doing budgetary, might be helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Lutz.
Carolina, thank you so much for the presentation and putting together the staff report. Like Colleen said, we got a complicated, stew, right, to put together. And sometimes it tastes good, and sometimes it needs a little salt, and sometimes you just don't have all the ingredients that you would like to put into that stew because they're not available, or maybe they just cost too much money. I do have some questions in your staff report, and should I wait until afterwards and then address those, or just focus on the the finance department? That was,
Uh,
that's what you asked for. You asked for, do you have any
Yeah.
questions about finance department?
If we could do the departmental with each section and then any of the overview, if we could wait till the end, that would be great.
Okay, great. So then, the question I have for you is that, you had that one slide that had all the percentages. And I think that's great. But, it would help me if there were dollar
Of
amounts
course.
next to those percentages.
Yeah,
Because, I look at those percentages and it's like, okay, 1.7, what is it? Right? So if there's dollar amounts there, then I get a better grip on that.
I know we made a decision to kind of keep it less cluttered for tonight, just to show that at a percentage and really just talk about kind of like what the more focus is for each department. But we would be glad to have, we could also have a page that would make the calculate, why force the public to make calculations? You could provide it for them. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, so if you could bring that back for, the next meeting where we deal with the budget, that would be great.
Okay.
All right, that's the only question I have in regards to the finance department.
I have one final finance question. When you talked about reserves, when was the last time the reserves were set? Because my concern is, are we responding to changing conditions, inflation, like you said, supply chain? Should we be looking at increasing those reserves?
Stuart might have a better idea of when they were set.
Sure. I think we did that about 4 years ago. And we did at that point in time, what we looked at was how much revenue we lost during the 2011 recession to determine what like 2 years worth of recession would cost us. We also looked at if we had a major, I won't say a major catastrophe in town because Randy tells me anytime I would say that out loud, FEMA would say if we have money set aside for major catastrophes, we don't get reimbursed for them. But if we had a major event that cost us a major sales tax producer, how much money would we need set aside for that? And that was where the $3.5 million comes from. And that's more of the cost for the general fund to cover, because if you think about water and sewer issues, they would come from the water and sewer fund, not from the general fund. So really that emergency is more for loss of revenue. And then we do every year increase our other annual reserve because that's just 5% of revenues and 5% of expenditures. Probably what would be good is after we're done with this recession type of that we're in right now, or recession-like period, is we relook at what the recession reserve was and see what we lost in revenues due to the recession. And then just, again, budget for 2 years worth. So that way it gives council an opportunity to make decisions before they make long-term decisions, as opposed to short-term instead of dealing with short-term problems.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan because we're dealing with pandemic and it's been exceeding everybody's projections on how things will recover or when, and we're still trying to recover and we still don't know when. And so those reserves are just something that make me nervous. So if we could look at that, I'd appreciate it. So Carolina, did you have an order on these departmental presentations? You want to just call those out and go ahead?
Yeah, so they have their order. So the next up will be HR if there are any questions. Thank you.
And by the way, I don't see any members of the public, so I haven't called for any public comments, but City Clerk, if we have anyone that shows up, if you could just alert me. I have been trying to monitor that.
Will do, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Mackin and members of the council. The Human Resources Department's mission statement is, the City of Brisbane prides itself on being an employee-oriented organization, which emphasizes our desire to provide for today and prepare for tomorrow. As we continue to serve current and future generations, we aim to use the city's mission statement as a guide for our human resources related processes. As the human resources team, we are committed to providing excellent customer service and supporting the needs of our staff and community. We will uphold our unified commitment to serving others and ensure that our employees, community members, and residents continue to feel valued and happy. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2022 to 23 for the department is $751,000 and $177,000. The human resources team is comprised of 3 full-time employees, which are the human resources administrator that manages and oversees the HR operations and performs high-level HR-related work, human resources analyst, manages recruitment and employee benefits, and human resources technician, manages employee training and development, health and wellness program, and our self-insured dental program. And 1 part-time employee, which is an office assistant, to provide and handle organizational and clerical tasks and general office support. Next slide, please. This is the same slide as what the finance department had showed earlier. And I will be highlighting the 4 top programs, which are employee benefits administration, employee and labor relations, hiring and applicant tracking systems, and employment policy and procedure administration. The employee benefits administration program entails management of employee benefits, such as health, dental, and vision benefits, wellness programs, retirement plan choices, paid leaves, and other services offered to promote a healthy work-life balance. Second is the employee labor relations program, which entails policy and procedure development and creation of working conditions for the city's workforce consistent with state and federal law. We do this to ensure a cohesive and harmonious organizational culture by promoting effective, fair, and professional relationships between the city and its employees. The department works with labor law firms to ensure the city remains in compliance with labor laws. Third is our hiring and applicant tracking systems program, which entails tools and resources for all stages of recruitment and hiring services to attract and hire future employees. We are currently utilizing CalOps job board to advertise all of our recruitments, and this job board also serves as a recruitment tracking system that documents all the phases of each recruitment. Lastly is the employment policy and procedure administration program, which entails management of employment policies. We deal with workers' comp, labor relations, and currently COVID-related policies that impact the city's operations. Staff works with third-party administrators, such as innovative claim solutions for workers' comp and labor law attorneys from Sloan Sakai, Young, and Wong LLP to ensure that staff is administering accurate procedures and up-to-date policies. Next slide, please. The only new item on my budget or proposed this fiscal year is the office assistant position. As aforementioned, this position will provide office support, including organizational and clerical tasks that allow the full-time employees of the HR department to focus more on streamlining HR processes to allow for a more efficient and effective workflow. We value the service that we provide our employees and would like to continue to provide our staff with high-level service. This concludes the Human Resources budget presentation, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Councilmember Lynn?
At this time, I do not have. But thank you, Abby, for your question.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Thanks, Abby. I have no questions.
Councilmember Davis?
No questions.
I just have one question. The half-time office assistant, so you would end up, I just want to clarify, you would have 2 part-time employees.
No, we included in the front page of my slide, Jordan and I had decided to just include the part-time
Okay.
office assistant to that because it's a proposal at this point.
Okay, so that's one
Mhm.
end. All right,
Yes.
very good. I have no other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the presentation. And we move on. Carolina, are you still there? I don't know what
I'm
department.
still here, but we're just gonna move to the next department and each will announce their section.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I'm Caroline Chung, your Communications Manager, and it's very nice to see you all tonight. I have the pleasure of presenting the next 3 budgets, which are your budget, the City Manager's budget, and the Library's budget. So let me just pull up the slide. Are you able to see the council budget presentation slide? Okay, great. So as we saw in, hold on, slideshow, full screen. We all had a mission statement. Oh, sorry. Placing. We all saw that there were a mission statement for the division or department. I don't believe there is a published mission statement, so we just pulled the general duties and responsibilities of the Brisbane City Council. And as the legislative body of the government, you make the final decisions on all major city matters. You adopt ordinances and resolutions necessary for efficient governmental operations. You approve the budget, and you act as a board of appeals. You appoint the city manager, city attorney, and also member of the city's planning commission, parks and recreation commission, complete street safety committee, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability committee, open space and ecology committee, and the public art advisory committee. Carolina had showed the adopted goals and results. I wanted to just make sure that they were again emphasized collectively. Most of the time we see them just individually on staff reports, but they are safe community, community building, ecological sustainability, fiscally prudent, and economic development. The overall budget for the City Council is $268,000. Number of positions includes a part-time employee, our history assistant. As you may recall, in the 2018-19 and 2019-2020 budget 2-year budget cycle, the City Council had recommended to staff to add a oral history project to that 2-year budget cycle, which included a history assistant. So this is the breakdown of the various programs. Of course, most of the budget is for the policy level decisions that you're providing as the top policymakers for the city, and also for the guidance to the various bodies that advise you. Community engagement and council events and workforce development follow. There are no new items proposed for this 2022-23 budget. And then I'll move on to the city manager's budget presentation. The mission statement is the city manager's department will provide leadership and administrative direction for the implementation of the policies and the accomplishment of the objectives set forth by the city council. We will recruit and retain quality employees and maintain and provide informational services to citizens and departments in a timely and effective manner. The city manager's overall budget is over 1.1 million. 4 full-time staff are included, which is the city manager, the assistant city manager, myself, the communications manager, and our communications coordinator. Areas covered include city administration, communications, economic development, and risk management. A quarter of the budget is for general administration for the city departments, followed by city council commission support is also about a quarter. And we are all very involved in citizen engagement. So therefore that follows, along with the different means, different programs that we do it with. I'll just mention the other 9% being the city administered social media accounts. Includes everything that you see that's put onto our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter next door, and it also includes our city's YouTube channel. We are very involved in the broadcast and live streaming of our public meetings, and now in the last 2 years, the live streaming of public events too, in light of the pandemic. So that's also included as part of the city administered social media account program. And there are no new items for the next 2022-23 budget. Finally, the library budget presentation. The mission statement of San Mateo County Libraries is to strengthen our communities by creating an inclusive sense of place and environment for learning. The overall budget is $70,000. There are no positions, as the city is responsible for the interior and exterior maintenance of the library building. This includes the garden areas and the patio areas outside and in the front of the library. Therefore, the program that this total budget is allocated to is stewardship of the built environment, so that this can be a building, being a brand new facility that can be enjoyed for many decades to come by the community. And there are no new items for this budget as well. Oh, and so that concludes my 3. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Councilmember Davis, want to start?
I don't have any questions.
Councilmember Cunningham,
I have no questions, and thank you, Caroline.
Councilmember Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. I don't have any questions, but just thank you for doing an excellent job engaging and getting out information to our community. You do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
I just have one question. Can you go back to the slide that shows the programs?
For which department?
Oh, I'm sorry, for the city manager.
Yes. This one?
Yes. I was just looking at the weekly update versus the Star newsletter, with one at 9% and one at 2%. And that just kind of, I don't know, out of the blue struck me. Why the difference? I understand on the weekly update, which by the way, I absolutely love. So I'm not trying to touch it. I'm just curious. You could probably tell me a little bit better. Why does that cost so much more to do?
Sure. So the weekly update is, as the name would suggest, published weekly. And so there is that time spent that is about quadruple of the Star. I mean, it's a monthly publication for the Star, so there is a lot of concentrated time to put that issue together. But once the monthly issue is done, then it's a matter of maintaining and reiterating the information in our weekly update. And also our communications coordinator is helping to compile information for our city manager's weekly update. And so therefore the cost would be a little bit different versus I'm the one that's predominantly working on the city's newsletter right now. So we have 2 people making sure that that weekly update is what it is. And then my time for the Star.
And since I personally recruit people to sign up for the city manager's weekly update, because I think it saves all of us on the council and everybody at City Hall a lot of time answering questions of what's going on, because you cover so much of that in such a timely manner. Have you in fact seen the number of people who subscribe to it go up? I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have about 1,200 subscribed.
That's good.
I think, yeah, when we started it was 1,000, so it's a steady increase as we, as I talk to people too and ask them, are you signed up, and get their email and get them on there too.
So I'd just like to see you put some plugs in the Star newsletter about signing up for the weekly update, because it's really a great informative piece to receive on a weekly basis. So thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome. I'm gonna drive for Ingrid.
Thank you, Caroline. Madam Mayor and council members, Ingrid Padilla, the city clerk, presenting our budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. Our mission statement is the mission of the city clerk's office is to help engage the community and local government and promote openness in government by processing and recording city council actions, coordinating municipal government elections, and managing all official records of the council promptly and efficiently. Our overall budget is $405,008. The number of positions, we have 2 full-time staff members, myself, the city clerk, and also our administrative management analyst, who also performs a lot of the deputy city clerk duties. We are also requesting in this proposal a part-time office assistant to help support our work. Our plan for the next fiscal year is really to continue and to strengthen our culture of engagement and openness within the city of Brisbane, and also promote a new, stronger culture of records management. And we're doing this through work around council support, agenda administration, elections, and records management. So as you can see within the city clerk budget, the majority of our time is spent on city council and commission support and records management. This is mostly personnel time dedicated to it. You're very much familiar with the work that we do as staff to help support the city council in helping achieve their community goal results. And we also provide a lot of support around, the subcommittee work with city council, as well as the committee and commission work. I've also had the privilege of increasing my work around diversity and equity issues, primarily supporting the new IDEA committee, the inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability committee, as well as the internal staff-led IDEA committee, EPIC committee. We also do a lot of work around records management, and that includes storage, working with consultants, and making sure that all the official records are kept properly within the city and available to members of the public. Our new items for this year is the part-time office specialist. We did have this position available, but the staff member eventually retired, and so and we were also hoping to kind of not have a better retention within the staff members, so we could strengthen our records management work. So we're hoping for a half-time position, and we're also looking into programs for electronic submissions of Form 700, so that it's going to be a more accessible program for our staff members, our commissioners, and our council members to submit electronically. There's been a higher demand to have a lot more options for electronic submission, and so we hope to get this program started for the next year.
Are you waiting for questions,
Yes.
Ingrid? Oh, okay.
Questions?
I thought you had one. Go. Okay, I'm going to start with the question. So the records management, dovetailing on Councilmember Cunningham's earlier question, do we have any records management that is being scanned into digital form?
We are currently working on a project, like we said, because there's not a lot of administrative support. We're often relying on our internship program or our consultant. So we're providing a scanning kind of records management scanning project within our internship program right now. So that started about last summer. And so we're continuing that this year, and we're slowly but surely scanning our permanent records into our system. The next step to that is one that we're working with our technology department, which is providing like a permanent permanent records management filing system, and that's going to be in the works in the future.
And do you have any records management that require you to keep paper copies for X number of years versus digital?
That's only for our city resolutions and city minutes and our
Right.
city ordinances.
Okay, that's what I thought. And storage, is that something that your purview also has to deal with managing the storage, or does that go to someone else?
Yeah, we work with Iron Mountain to do all of our storage of inactive records.
Okay, all right. Those are my questions. Thank you for the presentation. Councilmember Lentz, you want to start? Any questions?
You know, I don't have any questions, but Ingrid, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and just also to you and Angel for all the support that you give me and the rest of the council. You know, the amount of information that we need and that we ask of you, and you always deliver, you know, in a timely manner with a smile on your face. It's a real pleasure, and you know, thank you for helping me, you know, do my job the best I can.
Councilmember Davis?
Sorry, I was fighting with my mouse. It did not want to let me have control. I don't have any questions, but thanks, Ingrid.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Thanks, Ingrid and Angel, for everything you do. Form 700 electronic filing. Hallelujah.
And I would just finally add, if you've ever seen what Ingrid goes through during election cycles, it's so daunting, and she is such a trooper to keep going and always maintains her composure. I don't know how she does it. So thank you from all of us for that. We'll be nominating you for sainthood with the amount of paperwork you deal with that alone. It's huge. So thank you.
I have the pleasure of presenting the city attorney's budget. But any questions about the city attorney, Tom will answer that directly. So let me see if I can actually get my screen to go forward. So the city attorney works at the pleasure of the city council and supports the city council and the commission and the committee members. Their overall budget is $450,000. We have contracted positions for this, and the areas covered are legal services. 100% of their budget is to support the city council and the commissions, and they have no new items. With that, I'll wrap it up. And any questions?
Stuart, how did you get the easiest one of the whole night? My God.
You know, at some point in life, they said, Stuart, if you gave me a microphone, I would talk forever. So they said, no, let's give him the shortest one there is so we can keep him quiet.
Agree.
Hey, Councilmember Cunningham, any questions?
I just agree with what everybody else just laughed at. So thanks very much, Stuart, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you, Tom, for all you do. And our other legal staff too. Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz?
Yeah, thank you. So in regards to the $450,000, Stuart, does that include the council, you know, legal stuff, as well as when we have negotiations with our various employee groups?
Well, right now we are using staff to do the negotiations. We do have some legal services in the Human Resources Department, which is under the Employee Relations Program, because we do have some legal issues, you know, related to that, where we have an outside attorney for that specifically. So this covers more of the city council this covers the city council questions. This covers the planning commission questions. This covers, you know, the one-off kinds of questions that we have to do legal research on. And, you know, something like the Baylands or development type stuff, we bill directly to the Baylands and the BDI developer for those kinds of legal issues.
Okay, so anything that's Baylands related, it's in a separate pot, so not this 450.
Now, this is just the general funds portion of the city attorney. And the challenge with the Baylands is there's no way to budget it up front. It's a item by item that we do it in, and then we get reimbursed by BDI for the legal work we do on the Baylands.
Got it. So this is really the kind of day-to-day stuff.
Correct.
Council and the commissions do.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, well, that's it. Thank you, Tom, for all your great work. Appreciate it.
And I'll just echo what everyone else said. Thank you, Tom and Stuart. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. We needed that at this point.
Thank you. I think, does fire follow me?
Fire's up next.
Yeah, so it won't be nearly as short.
Yeah, it'll be pretty short. I'll do my best. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'll be presenting on the fire services. The mission statement, we made a change to this about a year ago because we thought that this reflected more of what we do, and we wanted people to pay attention to that mission statement. So we implemented that. That's something new to the North County Fire Authority. The budget is $4.4 million. There are 14 firefighter positions. 2 of them are administrative. And next slide, please. As you can see, the vast majority of the expenses associated with the fire department have to do with emergency response, which really we could categorize it as being emergency and non-emergency response. But I want to kind of emphasize the value-added services that follow up under, because 82% of the cost really is borne in that one category. But of course, it's our paramedic pre-hospital care that we provide. That's a vast majority of the responses that we go to and taking care of people on a daily basis. I wanted to emphasize, and the city manager brought this up as well, our firefighters and our fire companies over the last couple of years have been very involved in the COVID response. We provided the vaccinations for people within San Mateo County. We had participated in over 20 events where we did the mass vaccinations, assisting the county in getting people vaccinated. We spend a great deal of time going and doing public assists, things like helping people up. Pretty much if somebody doesn't know who to call on a 24-hour basis, they call the fire department and we respond and try and mitigate whatever problem is they have. Of course, we're involved in hazmat, specialized technical rescue, terrorism, incidents, you name it. We now have become a 24-hour-a-day response force for anything that occurs out there with our other partner agencies that also respond with us. Very involved in code compliance and inspections. I would point out that the other big value of this is if we didn't have our fire companies doing all the inspections, we'd probably cost you an additional, almost $1 million, because you need to hire probably 3 inspectors to take care of the amount of inspections that we do with our fire companies. And so that's a big value added component in there for fire services and that. Obviously, we do public outreach and public education, great deal of that. We're involved in the fire companies as well as dedicated fire inspectors involved in vegetation management and getting the inspections done of over 3,000 parcels. I wanted to quickly jump in and talk about some major annual goals that we look to achieve. We once again achieved and look to continue achieving a 98% customer service satisfaction rating. We have a goal of getting an emergency first due fire company on the scene of any emergency within 6 minutes on an average time basis. Last year, we were able to do it in 5 minutes and 36 seconds, which includes the time that they ring down the fire station to putting on their equipment and then traveling to getting to the incident. We completed all of the annual fire inspections that are mandated by state of California now. And we've completed all those inspections as well. We inspect annually each and every occupancy business and permitted occupancies within all of the cities. Another area we have to complete it's actually more than 240 hours per firefighter per year in the area of paramedic, EMT, and fire current and recurrent mandated training. And there are no new items. We'll go to the next slide, Ingrid, thank you. There are no new items for the budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Cunningham?
I respect you guys so much. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz?
Thank you for the presentation, Chief Myers. Been a while. I'm surprised. You guys usually have a lot of things that you want, and I'm kind of shocked that I see 0.
They said I couldn't have anything.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, you're a good listener.
Come on, help me here, Cliff.
Is that an invitation? Because I have another slide if you have time.
I got this contained, Cliff. Don't.
Yeah, sorry. I'll cut it off now. Yeah. I appreciate your mission statement. Yeah, I'm glad you guys, thinking that through and what you mean to the community, right, and how you want to be presented.
We on promotionals, when we hire people, we ask them to tell us what our mission statement is, and they never know the mission statement. So we figured that, the emphasis on that was, if you can do those 3 things, that's what we're looking for. And so I've always wanted to do it. I took 19 years, 20 years to do it, and now we have it in place. And so it meets the mark on what we're looking for.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for the great partnership. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Davis?
No question.
Okay. Chief Myers, thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. You mentioned the emergency response, and I'm not sure if I heard that right. Did that not also include all the calls you get for medical services?
Yeah, that and what I was trying to emphasize was under emergency response included, also non-emergency, but yeah, emergency medical pre-hospital care. That is, that's probably 70% of what we respond to. Fires can be a very large event, but they don't happen, unfortunately, as often as medical emergencies. So we spend a lot of time caring for the people in the communities.
Right. And I mean, we hear you responding all the time, way before the ambulance gets there. So I just wondered, then you have a program item there that was emergency medical services. Could you just help me understand, what is that then? Separate from the
so one of the things, as the city manager and assistant city manager mentioned, we're trying to refine these programs. That actually will probably be changed in the next one. That was referring to like equipment, and it's not really categorized properly. Our fault, but we're learning, on this program approach, and we'll refine it for the next year.
As long as you keep doing the stellar job you do and taking care of us, we'll let it slide this time.
Okay.
Thank you so very much for all you do.
All right. Thank you.
So next is the Police Department. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'll be introducing the Police Department's budget this evening, and we'll start with our mission statement. I'm going to have Commander Garcia share his screen because I'm not so computer savvy. You got it, Mario? Uh-oh, technical difficulties.
Yeah, give me 1 second real quick. All right, there we go. Okay.
Next slide, please. So we'll start with our mission statement. It is the mission of the men and women of the Brisbane Police Department, working in partnership with the community to provide highly effective and responsive police services, which protect individual rights, respect community values, and enhance professional ethics. We welcome the challenge to meet the present demands and prepare for the future while preserving the unique environment of the community we serve. So our proposed overall budget is $5,450,995. The budget covers 20 full-time positions. Out of those 20 positions, 16 of those are sworn police officer positions. The other 4 are non-sworn, and those include our 1 record specialist in records. We have a 1 administrative executive assistant. We have 1 community service officer and 1 code enforcement officer. The 20 positions cover the following areas within the police department, and that's patrol, investigative services, traffic enforcement, parking enforcement, records management, and code enforcement. The next slide, as you can see, we have a pie here. We have 3 divisions within the police department: administration, records, and patrol services. So as you can see in the breakdown, patrol covers 67% of the budget, administration 19%, and records being 14%. So I will start and briefly touch on a few of the programs within all the 3 divisions. The administration budget is $1,011,476, and one of the highest programs is the department management program at 13%. The department management program encompasses the oversight of the entire police operations, and that's from the day-to-day operations within all the divisions, policy and legislative oversight, and mutual collaborations within the county. Then we have the professional services program. That encompasses the time that we spend collaborating with our contract service providers within the county for the services they provide to our residents. And to name a few of those, it's Peninsula Humane Society, YMCA for Youth Counseling Services, CORA, which provides services to the victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, Star Vista, which is an alternative to incarceration for substance abuse, and Crime Lab for evidence analysis, and many others. Then we'll touch upon the investigations program. Administration provides oversight of all criminal investigations, review and approval of all in custody reports, assisting on crime scenes, major incidents, and oversight of internal and external investigations and complaints. We also have the workplace development program at 11%, and that involves leadership development for all of our staff, trainings on laws and legislative mandates, oversight of post-training mandates, and the organizational succession planning moving forward. And then one of the smaller programs, because we know that all the programs, whether they're large or small, really play a role in the daily operations of our organization. And the smaller program, as you can see at 3%, is code enforcement. And that involves the overseeing the position of code enforcement and then facilitating the daily operations in conjunction with patrol and other city departments. So then we'll move on to records management. The records management budget is $780,797. And we'll touch on the professional services at 40%. That program pretty much covers all of our contracts with all our service providers, such as our records management system, oversight and maintenance of our internal information technology system. The biggest contract being that with the city of San Mateo for our dispatch services, and then also the other costs of the other contracts such as the PHS for the Peninsula Humane Society, CORA, Star Vista, and some of the other ones that I mentioned earlier in the administration oversight. We also have the patrol services program at 27%, and that encompasses the daily support that records provides to the operations of the police department. And that could be from running statistical record data to the processing of reports for the district attorney for court prosecution. And then one of the smaller programs within records at 4% is the traffic enforcement program. And that includes the entering and processing of the daily citations, as well as handling traffic court liaison duties, such as entering and processing subpoenas for traffic court. Then we'll go off to the last division, and that's patrol services budget, which is the largest. That's $3,649,722. And we'll start with the patrol services program, which is at 35%. This program encompasses all of the daily patrol duties, from responding to calls for service, traffic enforcement, investigation of crimes, interdepartmental responses and assistance, outside agency mutual aid, and daily citizen engagement. We have the investigations program, which involves investigating criminal investigations from taking the initial report, gathering all of the evidence, conducting all of the follow-up needed to identify and prepare the case for criminal prosecution. We have the traffic enforcement program that entails enforcing basic traffic laws, but also attending to the various areas of traffic and parking concerns reported by our residents throughout the city. Another important program is the citizen engagement, which involves building and enhancing community relationships with our residents and the business community through every possible means when officers are out on patrol. And then we'll touch on one of the smaller programs. We'll touch on the animal services program, which involves the initial response by officers to animal calls for service, such as barking dog complaints, dog bite reports, other animal-related incidents, and working in collaboration with the Peninsula Humane Society officer on those types of incidents. And then the last slide of tonight's presentation is our 3 items that we are in need of replacing. One of them is the computer server for police records, as it's met its end of life expectancy of 7+ years. The replacement of our body cameras and tasers, as they have also met their end of life expectancy of 7+ years. And then the last thing is the purchase of the National Incident-Based Reporting System software, which will provide records, automated reporting of the mandated crime statistics to the Department of Justice. And that concludes my presentation. Council questions?
I'm going to start on this one. So I don't see, and thank you for your presentation. And it reminds me of so many things you do that we take for granted and forget about. I didn't see under your new items, ALPRs.
Yes, that's correct, because that hasn't been approved yet by council. So we would be bringing that to council in July. And if that gets approved, then we would make that request for the approval of the contract with the vendor at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Council Member Cunningham.
Thank you, Chief Macias. You know how much we respect you. I have no question.
Councilmember Lentz.
Thanks for the presentation, Chief Macias. Great to see you. So, you mentioned that we have 16 officers. Are we at full capacity right now?
No, unfortunately, we're not. We're at 13, so we're down 3. We're in the process of bringing finishing backgrounds, one on board, and then we have oral boards for some applicants that have applied for the position next week.
Okay, and then so not having the full capacity of officers, how does that impact your budget?
I can't tell you what the numbers would be. Certainly, it impacts the services when we're running short on the street, because we're running at 2 officers at minimum staffing. So we don't have that extra body overlap to help kind of ease in both of the different shifts.
Sure, I definitely get that. I mean, definitely the service is going to go down. I guess my question is does it, financially, if you have less officers, does your outgoing costs drop as well, or is there, does it get increased because of overtime and things like that?
Lisa, maybe I can help answer that one.
That would be great, Stuart. Thank you.
So in fact, we do. We save, not as Colleen, I think, mentioned earlier, or Karen mentioned earlier, police officers probably out the door, including all benefits, is probably $150,000 to $180,000. So if you're down 3 of those officers, you save that much money. However, you do have an increase in overtime, because when you're running minimum shifts, if somebody's out sick or somebody's out on workers' comp, you need to bring somebody back on overtime. Overtime doesn't cost quite as much as an officer does, but there is a trade-off. And this is one of those reasons why when we come in at mid-year, the mid-year numbers are usually lower than expected, because we have positions that are open throughout the year, not only in police, but in fire, public works, and other places.
Got it. No, that makes sense. And then, speaking of positions, so I saw on the items, there was a canine support or engagement or something like that. Did we bring back a dog or dogs in the operation?
Not yet. Our goal is to bring the program back. We've been wanting to proceed forward with bringing the canine program back. So in doing so, some of the time spent is really just more researching on the new laws, reestablishing the new program policies and so forth, so that when we're ready to move it forward, we have everything in place. But that is our goal. We'd like to bring the canine program back. It's such an asset to the department and the community the community, development with, in relationship with the canine is huge. And it also stands for another, kind of like another partner on the street. It's amazing when you respond to calls with that, when you have a canine, what the impact is when you're responding to a scene of maybe a fight, and all of a sudden they see or they hear the dog. It's kind of like having an additional partner on the road.
Yeah,
And it really, and then you can't speak for the relationship building also with our schools, taking the dog up to the schools, even at our day in the park, those events. I mean, I remember going up to the schools and they would do little exercises with the canine dog, and, really, again, establishing that relationship, that partnership with the schools, with the police officers is huge. So we are hopeful to get the program back in place within the next year.
fantastic. Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you to the entire Brisbane PD support team. I mean, you keep us safe. I mean, we got to be one of the safest communities in the Bay Area. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
No questions for me, but I'm all on board with canine program.
Councilmember Cunningham?
I get a second shot at this?
Oh, did I already call you?
Thanks again, Lisa. Chief Lisa.
All right, I think that's it. I'd like to just call for about a 5-minute break. We've got a long way to go, and I think it would help for everybody to stretch your legs, get some water. So if we can, we'll break for 5 minutes and come back. We are back in session. I understand our finance director would like to say a few words before we move on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Rather quickly, I before some of the presenters drop off, I just really wanted to say thank you to all the department heads and the budget managers that work with them and their admins to put all of this data into a new tool. It was a lot of work, very labor intensive, to get it running, to get it for the first year, and taking the time to really think through their programs and evaluate how to allocate these costs. So I just really wanted to say a big, huge thank you to them, and for getting this process rolling. And with that, next presenter is community development.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I think you're aware of the Community Development Department more than you like to be some nights. But anyway, our mission statement is to provide technical and professional support to the citizens, the Planning Commission, City Council, to develop and maintain community goals in regard to quality of life in the built environment, and to oversee development projects overall. Our current budget is approximately $1.6 million, 6 full-time positions. That includes 4 professional staff and 2 administrative support folks who deal primarily with the building side. And the 2 sort of sides of the house are primarily planning and the building permit process. Next slide, please, Ingrid. So again, going through this budget exercise, it's kind of interesting, kind of thinking the silos of building and planning as being kind of the two sides, but in pulling it apart, I think we're able to kind of, as Carolina mentioned, go a little finer grained here. Some of the major activities we talk about doing are things we're very familiar with: council and commission support, the processing of private planning applications, environmental reviews, city-initiated planning programs, and then you get into sort of the building side of building construction and building permitting. There's a whole level, and I think we wanted to pull it out separately, the levels of community and public engagement we undertake through the department. It can be fairly static in terms of a website where we're pushing out information and the public can access information very readily. But a lot of what we do has an education component, both on the building and planning side, so people understand what they can and can't do, what's required, what other people can and can't do with their property. And then there's an engagement piece in certain planning efforts where you're going above and beyond just educating, but you really are interacting with the public to get their perception and their input on important issues. So I think it was important to pull those out separately. Other activities are housing related, like the strategic plan that Clay mentioned earlier. We also have issues related to regional planning and coordination, for example, commenting on high-speed rails, environmental documents, or other environmental documents that are out there that affect the city. And then we get into some other issues of enterprise support, which means we provide support to other departments, for example, code enforcement or other city departments that need environmental or planning assistance. And we also have records management and workforce development, and keep our staff up to speed with the latest in state law and other planning and environmental and building requirements. So the next slide, we have a few items that the council's quite familiar with that we're suggesting for next year, proposing. Clay mentioned the Bank of America site visioning and planning effort. When we went through the objective development and design standards, we had talked about the need to look at Visitation Avenue and some of these tensions between minimum storefront size and parking. And so we are going to undertake that this coming fiscal year. And we also have an obligation to update our safety element of our general plan to update. There's better information, better mapping information, sea level rise information, and we want to make sure we're up to date with the best technical data. Then another item that's been talked about is, as you're aware, the council and the planning commission are going to be faced with several environmental impact reports to be reviewing this upcoming year, fiscal year. And it was thought that probably refresher on the CEQA training, similar to what we did for the Baylands several years ago, would be useful and appropriate. So we anticipate rolling that out shortly before the first of those EIRs gets published. And so that's all I have. I'm glad to take any questions you have.
I just want to start for some clarity here, why you think we don't like seeing you, because you have 3 former planning commissioners here, so we love seeing you. And if we didn't see you, we would know something was wrong. So let's just get that straight to start with. So Councilmember Lentz, you want to start with question?
Yeah, thank you, John, for the presentation and all the great work that you do. Yeah, you've been around a long time, right? You've helped nurture 3 of us through the planning commission process and eventually onto the council. You know, how does the work that you do as it relates to the Baylands, and how is that in your budget, or is it like a completely separate thing than what we're seeing tonight?
Well, again, Stuart can probably talk to efforts that have reimbursement agreements and how he kind of counts for those. We have just for the council's information, you've probably seen, we have a contract planner, Kelly Beggs, who's been working on projects that are solely funded by developers, EIR management. We did not include her, obviously, as part of the staff because she's not a permanent staff person. But I'll turn it over to Stuart in terms of that broader issue.
Sure. Just like the city attorney's time that goes towards the Baylands and gets billed and gets reimbursed by BDI, the same thing happens for planning. So for staff time, like John's time or Clay's time, my time, Randy's time, we have an agreement with them that they pay us a certain amount per quarter for our time. We are going to start charging them for space as we start growing with BDI. That was something that we talked about with the 25 Park Place. But other items like when you have assistance from the attorneys, from the planners, all that we receive a bill, we turn around and we send that bill to BDI. We pay it first. We send it to BDI. BDI then reimburses us, which is the reason we have a deposit account from them.
Got it. So everything that John listed,
that's
non-Baylands related.
Those are all non-Bayland issues. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
It's amazing that he can do the Baylands and all of that as well.
Right? Because you think about it, right? I mean, so much of, John, what you do in your team is related to the Baylands, right? And it's incredible the amount of work you guys do and the quality of it. So thank you.
I'm very fortunate to have a great staff who really picks up and does more than their share, for sure. Very lucky.
Councilmember Cunningham.
John, I have great respect for you. You've put up with a lot from me, at least, over the years. What a tough job we've got moving forward, and just so glad to have you on board. Thank you. And I totally understand what you did and all that stuff. So thanks so much. No question.
Councilmember Davis.
No questions. Thanks, John.
I don't have any questions. I just want to know how every year you stay on board with the city. You seem to get calmer when the problems get bigger. That one just mystifies me. Maybe you can share that with us someday. So thank you very much.
Higher, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for all you do, and your staff is just really amazing what they handle. I echo what Councilmember Lentz says. When you see the list of what you cover, I don't know how you're doing it with 6 full-time employees, but thank you for that. We need that.
Thank you.
I'll take some of John's wisdom too. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I am presenting for you tonight the Parks and Recreation budget as well as the co-sponsorship budget. Let me pull up my share screen real quick. Are you all able to view that?
Yes.
All right. So the mission of Parks and Recreation in Brisbane is to engage and inspire a healthier community by providing fun, inclusive, innovative, and safe parks, facilities, and programs. Our overall budget for the department is $2.9 million. We have 7 full-time employees and 50 part-time employees, which include preschool teachers, facility attendants, lifeguards, sunrise room staff, rec leaders, and beyond. We certainly could not provide the full scope of services that we do without their dedication. So we very much appreciate and value them as part of our core team. Our program areas include administration, facilities, youth, teens, adults, special events, seniors, and aquatics. As you can see on the graph here, our program areas, the largest segment of our program areas include administration, youth, and aquatics, primarily since those core service programs encompass the most significant outlay of our greatest resource, which is our employees. And diving a bit further into each of our program areas, first with administration, this budget primarily accounts for employee-related expenses, general department operations, our registration and reservation system, and support for the Parks and Recreation Commission. Moving on to facilities, this accounts for all indoor and outdoor facility-related expenses to maintain and operate the recreational facilities that you see on this list here. We did see a slight increase in cost here with the transition from one custodial service provider to another, but we're confident with the value that we receive that the added expenses will be essential to preserving the condition of our facilities for the public. Our youth budget encapsulates some of the department's largest program areas, including preschool and after-school programs, seasonal camps, and enrichment classes. The community demand for these programs is evidenced by the fact that we are fully enrolled for summer camps this year. And in the past 2 days since opening our registration for the fall after-school program, we have more than 90 youth enrolled. Our adult budget is mostly contracted classes such as the collective camp, Tahitian dance, and tennis. It also includes our adult softball leagues and drop-in sport. Our seniors budget encompasses the daily operation of the sunrise room, weekly contract classes such as art and agile aging, weekly senior meals, and support for the senior club. Our special events budget affords us the opportunity to coordinate those annual events that bring residents together and support the council's goal of building community. The teens budget supports the Youth Advisory Committee and facilitation of programs specific to that demographic. It also includes the $50,000 contribution annually to the school district for operation of the Club Lipman after-school program. Our aquatics budget accounts for year-round operation of the pool and establishment of opportunities for residents of all ages. Programs include lap and recreational swim, lessons, water aerobics, and more. We have 3 new item requests in this year's budget. The first being an allocation to complete the essential resurfacing of the community park playground. The total project cost is about $226,000. However, $180,000 of that will be paid for using the state of California Prop 68 per capita grant funds, with a 20% match amount of $48,000 required by the city of Brisbane to complete the project before the end of this calendar year. We are also requesting $10,000 to replace the worn and failing round tables at Mission Blue. With regards to maintenance at Mission Blue, we recognize that as the building ages over time, there's a more substantial need for maintenance, including renovations to the kitchen, replacing rotting exterior beams, accessibility upgrades, and other updates throughout the facility. You may recall as part of the CIP process, City Council had previously authorized for staff to pursue a consultant to scope design services for these upgrades, and we anticipate bringing that back to the council following the summer recess. And lastly, the council had expressed a desire to decorate Visitation Avenue in a festive way for the holiday seasons. It appears that will be possible later this spring, and therefore we're requesting a one-time allocation of $10,000 to purchase lights and other necessary equipment that can be used year after year. Moving on to our co-sponsorships budget. This supports local nonprofit groups with their operations, fundraising efforts, and events. Examples include the Artist Evening of Sharing, Brisbane Dance Workshop events at Mission Blue, Brisbane Village Helping Hands, the Lions Club, and more. There are no new item requests being made within the co-sponsorships budget. This concludes my presentation. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Noreen, thank you. Again, totally appreciate and respect all the hard work that you do. I have a question. Actually, I have lots of questions, but not for now. For the overflow potential for summer programs, are we referring people to the Big Lift programs through San Mateo County Library?
We haven't yet, but we certainly can as we receive those questions from the public.
Okay, can we be promoting that, and how could we be promoting that? Because that is a program, you know, I'm on the Foundation for the Library and on the JPA, and there is so much that program is offering people in San Mateo County, and I'm sure the majority of people in Brisbane probably know very little or nothing about it. So that would be something I would be interested in helping you with, if that's possible.
We'd be happy to, and I can connect with Caroline too to distribute the information to residents kind of on a broader scale.
Great. And my second comment is about the playground resurfacing. Really, it's $226,000 to, wow, that kind of blows my mind. But you know, it needs to be done. And have we had other bids on that kind of stuff, or was that kind of what that stuff costs?
We've had a handful of bids, and that's about what it's going to cost us to get it done and to do it correctly so that it lasts us over time.
And not just do this patchwork repair and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Okay, thanks so much. And thank you from my heart, you know.
Councilmember.
Sorry. Hey, Noreen, excellent presentation. And yeah, I'm glad that we're gonna repair the playground surface, because they got pretty beat up. Those kids are tough on the equipment. But you know, great job to you finding that grant from the state, and you know, it's costing us, you know, just 20-something% of the total cost. So that's awesome. And you know, just like Karen had mentioned, you know, we've always had a really good park and rec, you know, program and services. But when you came on board, you took it to the next level. And just thank you, you know, for just fantastic leadership and creativity. And the town really, really appreciates all the fun things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Davis.
No questions. Thanks, Noreen.
Noreen, I just have one question then. If you could confirm for me, you said the youth budget is 26%, right? And the dollar amount is at $745,853.
Hold on one second. $745,853 is the total amount under our youth program area.
Okay, the part I wasn't sure if I caught, is that just preschool and after school?
No, that encompasses our seasonal camps, our after school program, preschool program, youth contract classes, youth sports, the contribution to the Brisbane School District and beyond.
Okay, because the preschool after school, just a question to update, because we had COVID, we had more people working from home. I know a lot of people like to utilize the preschool and after school where they work and they just can't get home for their kids. Has that still stayed pretty stable in terms of how many kids are involved in preschool and after school?
It has, yeah. I mean, it definitely dipped a bit during COVID, but part of that was attributed to the fact that we had to have smaller cohorts. We could only operate with so many staff dedicated to those cohorts. But since that has been alleviated, we've been able to go back to our pre-COVID kind of numbers for each of the programs, and we are significantly enrolled almost to capacity for those programs.
Okay, and these numbers that we have on this entire proposed budget, we had a reduction in terms of activities with Parks and Rec during especially 2020. Are these numbers reflecting everything's open, we're going back to what was 2019? Or is this also modified that there may not be some possible.
Yeah, it is our best guess projections at what we anticipate doing over the course of the next year. It is mostly reflective of pre-COVID.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, good evening. Nice to see everyone. Before I start my presentation, I would like to remind you, as we've discussed before, that I have 13 divisions under my purview. And I haven't counted all of the previous discussions, but I believe if you discount Noreen's, the sum total of all the previous departments in their divisions that you've gotten to this point is pretty close to 13. So it gives you a potential sense of the time commitment. Now, knowing the hour, what I would like to do is I've got 3 divisions that I would very much like to discuss with you. And I think what I would like to do then is pause and see if the council has any questions and see if it's your pleasure to continue with the remaining 10, or if you'd like to just thank me and then move on to your final presentation for Central Services. So let me go ahead and start my presentation with the ones that I really want to show to you.
How thoughtful, Randy. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I want them all.
And you know how much respect I have for those people who work for me and the fine job they do for you. I would love to do that. So I'm going to go through, hopefully you're seeing Marina budget presentation. Is that perfect? Excellent. And so I'm not going to read our department mission statement to you. I have it on good authority that you're all quite familiar with reading written word. So you see what we are. We've got 4 positions out there. It's an enterprise fund. This is one of those things I look at as we start thinking about going to the resource budgeting type program. I look at this and it makes sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to me. But the reason I really wanted to share this with you is as we go to our new items, because one of the things that we don't have that we should have is we should have put in a security budget. And let me tell you the reason why. Look at our new items here. You know, a harbor master vessel, we have to do a little bit of increase in janitorial advertising. We got to do a bathymetric survey. It's getting to the point where the entrance channel, where we're getting a couple of complaints, and in different type situations, people are starting to rub the bottom a little bit. But security patrol. And here's the reason I want to highlight this, because if really there's a reason to want to keep doing a resource budgeting type basis versus a typical line item basis, is that when you look at this, this is showing that we're adding $50,000 under professional services for security patrol. But, and it's also showing, and I'm having to call it out separately, that 100% of that was covered by a decrease because years ago we stopped using PSAs for that. Now, that's the line item approach, which means you've got to show, okay, well, we've got a decrease here and we've got a savings here. If we were doing this just simply as a program, and it was a program that said security services, all that you would see and all that you would have to consider as you were making budget decisions is that the dollar amount for security services went down a little from one year to the next, from when we went to PSAs to having a professional services company come in. So that's what I think the real value of this could potentially be for you, that it helps you make those decisions quickly and we don't have to go, well, from this account and this line item and this account to that line. So that's why I wanted to share this with you. And hopefully that presentation was of some use to you. Oops. The next one I'm going to go into, if I can get I'm having mouse problems too. Okay, hopefully this one says Public Works budget presentation. I think I need Councilmember Davis's cat to come in here and fix my mouse problem. Perhaps would resolve it for me.
Not with the dog in your office.
I love that cat. That cat is so fun. So anyways, so again, here's the overall department. You can see we're a big department. I've talked to you before about the number of positions we cover, how we really kind of very quietly spend half your money when you look at the special funds and the enterprise funds and the general funds and the CIP funds. And we're just keeping water moving uphill and sewage moving downhill and trying to keep the streets passable and trying to keep the grass mowed to the extent we can. This is what it looks like if you want to break it down. Really not a big surprise when you think about it. It's really these 3 here that are the big ones. It's the cost to send our wastewater and have it processed to SFPUC. Within GVMID, it's both the cost for wastewater and the cost to purchase water. And then in the city of Brisbane's, right here in the city of Brisbane's water system, it's the cost to purchase that water. Those are our big numbers. That's what admin looks like. Here's the one I really want to talk to you about, though. And this is another conversation when we talk about doing things on the resource budget. So this is open space, right? And I first looked at that and I said, whoa, why are we spending more money on stewardship of the built environment than stewardship of the natural environment? And so I kind of had to reset my internal head screw and go, well, hang on a second. The reason for that is that this budget is no longer just about open space, which is what it started as 25 years ago, because this is now where your sustainability manager resides. So this is where the sustainability manager is. This is where you get all the support for your climate action plan, where you get the Brisbane Building Energy Efficiency Program, where you get the assistance she provides to me with SB 1383 and the state's really powerful goals about trying to reduce the amount of organics that's going into our landfills, where you get the person who applies for the grants and administers the project, put EV chargers in to try and get photovoltaic cells on Mission Blue, to go to a heat pump system to replace the gas system or to supplement the gas system at the pool. That's where all that comes from. And honestly, it's caused a little bit of confusion, a little bit even with the Open Space and Ecology Committee. So, and I don't need an answer on this tonight. I think this is just kind of something to noodle on, because we don't even need it for your approval of the budget. But if that becomes confusing to you or to any of us, I could certainly create another division. What's more, I've already got 13. We could create a 14th division and try and parse out what's really open space and what's sustainability. Or is this all just sustainability now? And again, not a conversation we need to have now, but I want to point that out to you because that was certainly my first reaction. And I wouldn't want anyone looking at this presentation, because we've done it on a resource-based program, even though it's kind of line item, we've sort of melded the two together. I wouldn't want anybody to think that, oh no, we're focused more on the build, we're not protecting the natural. By focusing on some of the build, I would submit certainly, and I think you understand, and as we're focusing on the climate action plan, particularly, and we're focusing on the building efficiency program, that helps the natural environment, right? That's how we're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's how we're trying to do our part to save the planet. So with that, move on. Oops, what happened there? I do not like that. That displeased me. I'm sorry. Something happened there that I did not like. I seem to have lost my new items. Where did they go to? Every one of those disappeared. Well, that is disappointing. So anyway, so we did have new items that were in open space. The biggest ones really are that we are looking from a staff perspective, we need a Climate Corps fellow. And the reason we need a Climate Corps fellow is much like when we initiated the building efficiency program, we just simply can't run it completely with just one person. I can't just have Adrienne doing it by herself. So that's something we need to do. Also kind of a small cost. It's about a $12,000 software cost that we need to update the program that runs the Brisbane Building and Energy Efficiency Program. We knew that when we went into that. We told the council about it when it happened. So, there we have that. Also, the Open Space and Ecology Committee has two asks. I believe it's approximately $40,000 to $60,000 ask. They want to do ivy removal from Firth Canyon. And there's also a $5,000 ask to do a frog habitat. This is going back to the V Creek issue along Cypress, where we're trying to enhance that habitat, and we keep going back and forth. Is it habitat? Is somebody going to maintain it? The building owner wants to concrete it. And we're trying to come up with a plan that keeps the yellow tree frogs that we have up. The last program I want to talk about is admin, and I am so embarrassed that this has done this. This is the last program I want to talk about again. Public Works admin. I am so. I am just deeply apologetic here. Somehow these things have fallen apart on me. Okay, so let me go back to what my biggest ask is in Public Works for admin. The biggest ask is to put a budget management analyst within the department. And I'll tell you the reason why. As Carolina noted very clearly, the budgeting program is very complex. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of interface. The finance program we have, Tyler, also requires a lot of interface. And I'm sure the council is well aware. You see the size of the staff, and finance has gotten larger to manage that. The size of the staff and HR has gotten managed to do that. But what people don't realize is that those programs become data monsters. They become black holes needing data. And here's an analogy I use that I think a lot of people will understand. On its surface, a lot of people will tell you that Microsoft Word, of course, lets you write a letter faster. And I submit that that's not the case. And I'll tell you why. If I think back to the 1970s, when I had a lot less hair, but none of it was gray, and I was a young man in the military, and And we were using manual typewriters. And apologies to those of you who don't remember what a manual typewriter is. A manual typewriter is to iPad, as a slide rule is to calculate. But you had a manual typewriter and it had a platen and a roller, and you very carefully took a piece of paper, and then you put a piece of carbon behind the paper, and then you put another piece of paper behind it. And then if you were really cool and you're a really good admin person, you had a special piece of paper that was numbered on the left margin from 1 to 32, and then from 32 to 1. And that always lets you know exactly how many lines down you were so you could put your header in the right place, and how many lines you needed to save to put a footer in, put a footnote in. Now that made typing a letter a little cumbersome at first, but the difference is that in that time, in the 70s, we had admin manuals that let you make lineouts. Like if you had done something that you didn't want to do, or you had misspelled some word, you had X number of lineouts that you could do per page, and then you could just bring the letter into your boss and have them sign it. Now think about what we all do with Microsoft Word because it's so capable. You type the letter, you think about it, you kind of look at it, maybe you futz around with it a little bit, then you hit spell check, then you hit grammar check, and then you send it to a colleague, and maybe you send it to your boss. If you're lucky, they use track changes. They all play with it. Everybody moves the paragraphs around. And so at the end of the day, because that system is so robust and it lets you do so much, you spend more time producing the same product. And that's part of what's happening with the finance and the budgeting program. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think that the output that we're getting is incredibly useful and it's necessary in this modern world. But the challenge is that because it's become so data intense, particularly when it's someone like Public Works that's trying to deal with 13 different divisions, is it takes people who should be providing direct services to our customers, and it's forcing them into the mode of being an analyst because they're spending so much time trying to generate that data, generating those extra codes, allocating things into program, and trying to keep track of things in a very complicated system that they're now being taken away. Their time has to be taken somewhere. So now instead of being directly dealing with the customer, instead of dealing with our daily operations and maintenance, instead of responding to our regulators, instead of managing capital improvement projects, they've got a piece of their time taken away. So what I'm suggesting, what I think whoever's running this department needs is they need someone to do that. They need an analyst that can be the focal point for that. And I think there's some other really valuable things that can happen because our budget has gotten so big, because we provide so many services here, we need to be able to get it so that somebody on a regular basis can say, here's an update, here's what's going on with that. Here's the status of this capital project. I was joking with our harbor master the other day that if I wanted to know how much we spent on fishing pier repairs, I would have to go to his elbow file. And I would have to say, you compile that, because we don't have an individual system to do that. But if we bring a budget analyst or a management analyst in, that's one of the many other things that we can do. We can really nail our costs down and keep our good costs. So that's what my ask is going to be on that for you. And with that, I have covered the 3 divisions that I told you I'd like to cover. And so I'd be happy to pause and answer questions and see what else the council might want to do.
Councilmember Lentz?
Thank you, Randy, for showing the 3 divisions. And you're right, you wear a lot of hats, man. And it's incredible the amount of knowledge and energy that you put into all those different things that you're in charge of. Yeah, no, that's super impressive. But I get where you're coming from, and you perform at such a high level, and there's only so much you can do, right? There's only so much energy you got, and then then having this system, that is new and requires a significant amount of time. And it was interesting that Carolina, made had that little, statement before the rest of the department heads, spoke. And it's, I'm glad that you brought it up with us, and you can tell that it's coming from a sincere place. And that is, you're not someone who asks for something, just because you'd like to have it, right? That's not your style. You ask for something because you really need it. And so this person that you're thinking about bringing on, they would be more of a like inputting the data, building building out the system that we're kind of creating right now?
Yes, doing that and also being able to be the interface between the systems that finance and human resources are using, and being able to provide that feedback to me, and being able to provide regular updates to my deputy directors of public works, my harbor master, my regulatory compliance program manager, so they understand on a regular basis where their budget is, because we need to get to the point where we are tracking our budget. And it's just, we don't have the bandwidth to do it right now within the department. And so that becomes a drain on finance when we go into them and we need it. So this person would be that interface that would help us and help them, I think, too.
You know, that makes sense, right? So you guys are doing the job. This person is making sure that everything is, you know, going to the right places. And yeah.
Correct. Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Okay. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Davis,
No questions. Thanks, Randy.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Randy. I really understand that, you know, your department, you're not the biggest budget, well, you are the biggest budget department, but your department has so many different things to do. You said it's like 13 different departments. I agree. You know, it's this and it's this and it's this and it's this. But are we using, or are we going to use the same resources to track and manage all of your systems that we're going to use to track and manage all of the finance and administration, police and everything else? I really see this as we've got one big thing that we need to be working on with all these other tentacles going on. I don't ever want to see again in our city that we've got all these different systems competing and working against each other. And of course, you know, 20 years ago, there wasn't any of these electronic things that could track things. But can we somehow manage all of that under the umbrella of, you know, finance and everything else? It might be a question for play, but I think.
So, ma'am, if I may, I almost think it's a question of the other department heads to see what sort of support they need. And I certainly wouldn't presume to speak for them.
No, I understand. And it's like, you know, you've got the rental of the marina, and you've got the sewer thing. You've got to make sure that the water pumps are working every day. I understand the diversity. It was one of the things when I first got elected to city council, was like, what does Public Works do? And I went on those tours. I'm like, okay, let me go see the pump station thing. That has to happen every single day. And I don't know if it's once a day or how many times a day. That is a time consuming and massive thing. And if something goes wrong there, we're all screwed. So that's one part of this multiplicitous thing that is going on relative to your department. So I think your conversation with us deserves its own pod, because I don't think we've touched anything or understand. I don't understand everything. I go out to the marina every morning. I could tell you 100 things that I think need to change. I walk around town and people running traffic lights. I could tell you 100 things that need to change, but I think your department has the most things that need to change. And not because the people who work there are not doing the right thing. It's just like, this is an enormous task. So if I were to make any recommendation or ask our city council to think about this, it's like, can we pull you aside for a separate meeting and figure it out? Am I making sense, you guys? I know it's 10:30 at night, but I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, well, ma'am, I'm here to serve. So if council wants to have a separate meeting with me, or a subcommittee, maybe the infrastructure subcommittee or something along those lines, happy to do it.
I think that's where it should start.
I'm just noting the time, and I still have a question for you, Randy, but I think we need a motion to extend the meeting. And
I'll make that motion.
My ask is, do we believe 30 minutes will be enough? Isn't this the last presentation, department?
There's one more from Central Services, ma'am.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yes.
well, let's
That
start
should be
with
quick.
30-minute extension. Can we have
Made that motion.
we have a motion, we need a
Second.
second, and a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cunningham,
I,
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz
Aye.
and Councilmember O'Connell is absent. Mayor Mackin.
Aye, thank you. Randy, I'll be quick.
Sure.
I didn't catch how many part-time employees you have. How many?
We don't have any right now.
Oh, okay. All right. And I would just echo what Councilmember Cunningham said when you talked about a budget analyst. I'm thinking my question to you, which you don't have to answer, I think we need to get more in depth with your department, would be, do you have adequate software right now to track what you need to track? Because that's something the IT consultant had talked about, the interface of all the different softwares. And I remember seeing they presented the list of what you had just under Public Works, and it was astounding how many different softwares you have.
Right.
So I expected to see that software on the wish list, but maybe that's premature. But I do think we would do a disservice if we didn't deal with this in a little more detail with you. And infrastructure or technology would be happy to go into depth on this.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. And if I may respond, I think that the issue is not the lack of software, although I certainly acknowledge that we have a pending software update problem. I think the issue is just not having enough resource, not having the right resource to be able to interface with existing programs from other departments. And I would also suggest that by having a budget analyst on board now, before the new software programs were developed, would be so much better, because then that person could play a key role as part of the selection committee and as part of someone who's reviewing those, so they could explain, they could be an advocate for the department to say, yes, we understand someone might want this department, but that's how it's going to have this impact on us. And so that way we all work together more holistically, and we don't make decisions in silos, only because right now I don't have somebody in my department that has that expertise.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of that information. I appreciate that.
Madam Mayor,
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I can just follow up on this, just so that we're kind of all clear. A lot of, I think what Randy as a department head is speaking to are things that we're trying to deal with, administratively in the organization, in finance, human resources. The amount of reporting through the state and federal and CAFRs and various sorts of things we have to do from the time I got here to the time now is just exponential. And so I think our support departments are trying very hard to keep up with that and to keep moderate. A budget analyst in an operating department is a very common approach in almost every city. Every city that I've ever worked at, other than Brisbane, we've had that. Because we're small, we've kind of gotten away without it over the years. The way I look at it is it's the administrative support in the department. So in this particular case, the engineers can be engineers. In the police department, if you had one, it would be so that the police department is the police officers and the command staff is doing police work and not having to be inundated with administrative support work. But the administrative support work is really driven by a much more complicated world that we live in today. And so they're simply responding to that and trying to create the systems that will support that. So this is a growing pain that we're going through right now. The budget analyst in the Public Works Department is part of my recommended budget. So it's in there and ready to go, assuming we approve the budget next week. And I think, as we look into the future, both the technology money we've got, plus trying to deal, with the organizational structure, I think are going to be challenges in the next few years. But I just want to put that in maybe a more citywide context for you.
I so appreciate that statement very much, because I think we do forget how much reporting is required. And it seems like every time Sacramento passes another law about you need to report on this or that, it just it's gotten cumulative, and that is always really reduces your available time to do the work you want to do, because you're sucking up all this administrative time with reporting. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
Yeah, and you know, the other part of this is COVID has added problems to this too, because particularly in HR, there is so much reporting and dealing with that incident from an HR perspective that has been really time consuming over the last couple of years. Hopefully that will abate a little bit going into the near future, but I know that that's really been a staffing challenge over the last couple of years, and I appreciate everything Abby and her people and Caroline and her people have done in the last few years to deal with all this stuff.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got last presentation.
Last one, central services. Great. Okay, so central services doesn't have any positions, but it is the department that covers the cost of organization-wide services and programs not attributed to any one department, and we are responsible to implement policies and programs as established by the city council and the city manager. So we're requesting a budget next year of $1,011,000, and the area is covered, again, general citywide. So moving to the next slide. So again, it's a support, and it's covering the organization. So the biggest component is an administration component or focus. And then next we have the computer system, and this is the org-wide, so the network. Additional costs for tech that we have that increased during COVID time. That's all built into that computer system line. And then the next one, stewardship of built environment. So these are the utilities, janitorial services for City Hall and any shared spaces. And then the rest you can see are other types of support. We have some newsletter cost here that we share with community, with city manager for Caroline, and these I believe are the these are the printing costs. So the new items that we have for next year, now for 25 Park Place, we have a full year worth of rental and any supporting costs for that. The public meetings now have the camera operators supporting all of the public meetings, not just council and not just some of the commissions, but all of the public meetings are now being supported. Additional technology support. Again, this is, we now actually have one extra day of IT personnel support on site that we're requesting to continue. We found this extremely helpful while we had many employees working remotely, that it was very helpful to have 2 people on site to be helping troubleshoot and other technology that we're trying to roll out or any software applications. It's very difficult for one person to be doing support as well as rolling out some of the initiatives that we had. So this additional support is very crucial. And then again, utilities and support for the new properties, including 25 Park Place and then the old B of A building. So these are the items that we're adding for this budget. And with that, that's it. So first I'll take questions for central services, and then we can move on to the general question.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Davis?
No question.
Councilmember Cunningham?
I'm sorry, I probably missed it. It is late. The added technical services, I think are really important, but I think I missed what that financial value is to the city.
The additional tech support? Sorry.
Utilities for all video meetings and added additional tech support. So from the central services, what's the budget for new things besides 25 Park Place, which we can then rebill out at a later date? But for things that, you know, for the video meetings, additional tech, can you put a number on that? Just a rough number. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Right. So for the, let's see, for the support, for the network support, we're looking at a 40,000. That's just for one more day a week.
Yep.
Okay. And then
utilities and all video meetings, that added technical support. Do you have a number or no?
Oh, for total?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so for total, we're looking at 260,000. It's including the new rent.
Oh, so that's including the rent on 25?
Yes.
Okay,
So Karen, 260,000 is the overall cost. 150,000 of that is for the new build, the rent for the full year versus just a half a year. Okay. And Carolina said 40,000 was for the additional person. So there's about $70,000 in all the other new items that are being requested.
Yep.
Okay, and is that included in that computer systems overall? Sorry, I'm being pedantic this late at night.
Are you talking about the new project? Or I want to make sure I understand your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and it's like central services.
Yes.
Admin computer systems, 40,000. Is the computer systems 40,000? Was I right on that?
Yeah, it's the additional tech support.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz?
Thank you, Carolina. The new cameras that are being installed to read the license plates, is that going to come out of this particular budget, central services?
No, that'll come out of the police budget.
Yeah, that's
it's a police.
Budget.
And
Okay.
it's not approved yet, so it's not in the budget.
Okay, I get it. All right, I know that we've talked about it. Okay, but that's where it will come. Yeah, thanks.
We'll do it as a mid-year adjustment if you approve it.
Okay, that'll work. Thanks, Clay.
Councilmember Davis, did I miss you?
I think you might have called on me already and I had no.
You had no questions. Okay. I only have one very quick question. You noted under central services, economic development. Is that also allocated under, wasn't that also allocated under the city manager?
Yes. So, but there's a component for, looks like if there's some events that are more geared towards economic development that we also have here.
Okay.
For City Hall related.
Okay. Thank you very much for all that. Okay, so you mentioned that we could go back to some general questions, and I have a couple. I know probably everybody might have a couple. Let's start with Councilmember Cunningham.
I asked my questions, and if I didn't, I think we can revisit them after this evening.
Okay, Councilmember Davis.
Same.
Councilmember Lentz.
So Carolina, I know that you talked about like there's like certain revenue that comes in. It's kind of like a one-time thing. You can't really, put that into the budget. We have received some federal relief money. That's not included in any of the revenue projections that you've shown here.
No, that's not. It's in a different fund. Currently, it's not part of the general fund. It's been recommended to keep it separate, especially because we have until fiscal year 25 to decide how we want to spend the money, what we want to use it towards. So it's being handled separately, and we've already spent a portion of it, but it is not part of this budget.
Got it. Like when we were dealing with COVID, we kept all of our receipts, right, so to speak. So here you go. Well, this is what it costs us. So then that money, but that, came out of things like the general fund, correct?
Yes, and there were some funds that we actually did receive from the state, the initial assistance that qualified, because unfortunately not everything that we did qualified for some of the programs that were out there. So whatever we could, we did apply to reimburse ourselves for that.
Okay, and then so all those reimbursements they've been complete.
Right. The first round was I believe in 2021 was the first round. Early. Yeah.
All right. And then, just to, get back to that resource X, just so that I, understand it. So, so we're creating this new system, and all the departments are basically, they're kind of like putting in the information to kind of build the overall system. Do I get that right?
So right, it's a tool. It's basically a database, but with a front end that allows the user, to build reporting or build reports and perspectives, different views. Again, like I mentioned, that you can slice and dice differently. But the primary reason we're using it is because we found it was one of the better tools out there in order for us to see our costs at a program level. And it's not only just entering the data to put in there and assigning the programs, but it also has an element where you can then score your programs, and that's the next phase, and that's going to be really helpful for us. We're laying the foundation in order to get to that next step.
Okay, great. So so here's this kind of like scaffolding framework, right? And we're adding the meat to the bones and all the other parts. And then I'm glad that you talk about, like how you can create this accountability. And then, so are you also then anticipating it once we kind of get it all together, that then it goes on the city's website and that the public can kind of see how the money is being spent?
Absolutely. So what we will be including in this year's budget package will be some of the information that similar to what we've been presenting tonight, so that people can really see how the costs are at a program basis.
Awesome. I mean, I'm really glad that we are going in that direction. But I'm also hearing Randy too, and it's like, okay, yeah, we need to support our department heads and then all the other folks, so that they can do their job. But then also we need to build this too.
Right.
And so having that additional support so that we create that system that we can, are any other cities, moving in the direction, at least in the Bay Area, like we are with our budgets?
Yes, there are some other cities that were tackling the priority-based budgeting method and even utilizing the tool. Different cities are at different stages. We were in an elementary stage for several years, so it could take it could take several years depending on how the council, how management, how with the partnership of how you want to see the information. One of the other things I want to mention is, or just reiterate, is this was one of the reasons why we only wanted to do 1 year, because it allowed us to look at the process, and now we can improve it so that the next time around, when we do work with the departments, that we can see where the pain points were and how we can minimize those, for not only for the finance department, but especially for the other departments. So we are looking at the process of how it was, at least this phase of it, how it was rolled out and how we can improve upon it.
Fantastic. No, I'm sure you're very excited about all this stuff, right? I mean, that's what gets, numbers people all kind of pumped up, having this new toy, to work with, but it has such, great capabilities of really just, just making our overall organization, fiscally, just so transparent and accountable. So thank you. In the,
if I could just follow up on that,
Yeah.
this is really the fruition of the work that you may recall that you and Councilwoman Richardson, I believe, were involved with when we tried to do priorities in the budget process back maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, I mean, this is the evolution of that over a number of years, because we've been working with the people who do Resource X for, I want to say, 5-6 years. We've had staff go back to Denver where they're headquartered and get training, and we've been just trying to evolve this process along. So this is really a very long-term effort to get to a program budget and then be able to get it to the priority-based budget. And as you indicated, make it very transparent to the public, have this very much part of what they see on our front-facing public relations stuff, whether it be the website or how we communicate that out. So just kind of wanted to kind of tie this together, because this has come from a lot of work over a number of years, and that involved a number of council people who were interested in this at various stages. So
yeah, no, thank you, Clay. See, Carolina, in the staff report, there was, the I guess it's on page 2, and it's got the actuals, two lists of actuals and 2 projected or proposed, excuse me. Is it projected? No. Yeah, projected. My eyes are getting tired late in the night. So there's for the actuals, there isn't a 2019 to 2020.
Right.
So I'm curious about that.
Go ahead. Your question is.
Yeah.
Why
So
is
I'm
it
just curious
missing?
why it wasn't in there. And then also, it would be. I'm just really curious if you could show us some actuals with, or some projected with some actuals, so that we can kind of see that pattern of in a sense, how you guys use your crystal ball to kind of, figure things out, and have we been, right on the mark, or have we kind of sandbagged a little bit, or are we, did we get a little too aggressive in what we thought were going to be our revenues?
Okay. Let me address the first question. So we did not include fiscal year 1920. What we were trying to do was show results from pre-COVID. And because 1920 was right when COVID happened, it wasn't a true reflection of, it was an anomaly year. So it was hard to really show anything that would of value. We didn't think it was as valuable to show the comparison of before. And then 2021 was a full year of COVID, reaction and how we were dealing with it. And then now what we're calling more of the recovery period, and seeing how now the results are after dealing with COVID.
Okay, nope, that makes sense. And then, so yeah, when we have our next budget meeting, if you could just give us those snapshots, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we track actual compared to budget. It's definitely something that we do look at closely, and we have to actually report on it with the in the annual report. But we can certainly include something in the next presentation, at least a graph for you to see that comparison.
That would be great, because I know it's more, I guess, it's an art and a science, right?
Yes.
One of the things that Stuart brought up when it was at the beginning of your presentation, and you made the comment about like Randy doesn't like for me he wants me to be really clear about this emergency reserve, and this is like, can we call it a different name? Because we don't have to call it that, right? I mean, I would hate to just, if there was some kind of natural disaster and they said, okay, well, this is an emergency, reserve that you have here. And we say, oh, well, yeah, well, it's emerging, it's a financial emergency, right? If you lose a major, sales tax producer, or, for example, the hotels, taking a major dip. Yeah, I mean, so there's, or am I just kind of being a little paranoid here about like changing the name?
No, I mean, we're calling it unexpected events because it's more than just natural disasters. It could be a fiscal emergency. It could be other types of unexpected events. So.
Yeah. I'm just wondering. I mean, we all know what it's for. Just that so FEMA doesn't, and maybe I'm off base here, but it just seems like, yeah, I'd hate to have FEMA say, hey, you got some money here. We're only going to give you this because you got these reserves.
So we do call it unexpected events. So.
Okay, so it's not the emergency reserve?
Well, I'm seeing it as the emergency reserve for unanticipated events is how I'm seeing it.
I know. Clay, can you maybe
Yeah.
Am I off base here, or Randy or somebody?
Oh, I mean, what you're bringing up is a concern. We don't want to be in a position where, if we had something that was called, earthquake fund, or something that was that obvious, that potentially could cause us some problems. But, I mean, the balancing act is that you want to have reserves. So,
No, it's just the name, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've been trying to address that issue with the way we call it. We can take another look and see if there's a concern there. But, I understand your point. I mean, we don't want to get into a situation and then have funds denied us because we've got funds reserved.
Exactly. All right. And then, I'm looking forward to having the discussion with you all in regards to the sales tax. So I guess we can deal with that later.
So with regards to that, what my plan would be, unless you tell me differently tonight, would be to put that on your July 14th meeting for consideration to place it on the November ballot. You will basically have to make a decision that evening to do so, because we have until July 18th to submit the request to the county. If you choose not to go this 2 years, you could do that too. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you can't make that decision, but you would not be able to say to delay it until August and then make a decision. You'd have to make the decision in July.
I think that we should move forward with that.
I agree. If that's a first and a second on whatever we need to do, I agree.
Unless I hear otherwise, I will place it on the agenda and work with the mayor to have it ready for the July 14th.
Great.
Councilmember Davis, did you get a chance to ask questions? I lost track.
Yeah, I didn't really have any.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left and I have a couple questions. Can I get a motion for 5 more minutes, please?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell is absent. Mayor Mackin.
Aye. Carolina, very quickly. Resource Act, I applaud the idea of a 1-year budget, especially implementing new software. My question to you, knowing finances are very sticky, are you running tests on the new software compared to old, whatever you were using, or are you running old and new concurrently so that you have a sense of whether this new software is on track to what you expect?
Yes, we had the opportunity to load the prior year data in order to test to make sure that it was flowing through the system properly. So there is some tweaking that we found as a result, just like any other implementation. So we are doing that kind of testing. It's a little different from a true accounting software program. But since we do have something to validate some against, we will always take that step.
Okay, good practices. And the last question I have is the TOT projected 22-23. How did you arrive at that number? I'm just curious.
We are looking at trend as far as some of the of what we've been collecting these past few months, trying to see if part of it is seasonal versus true recapture. So we did take a look at the different what we've been collecting, comparing it to prior year, and also some of the other discussions we've been having regarding the TOT in general with the council.
All right, thank you. Any other last minute questions before we, okay? So I don't see any members of the public. City Clerk, do we have anyone that has texted you? No, absent that. Oral communications, number 2. Is there any member of the public wishing to make a public comment?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Wow. It is now 11 p.m. and we are adjourned, right on the nose. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.